January 23rd, 2024 Winchester Planning Board meeting. We are being recorded through WinCam. Thank you very much, WinCam, as well as over Zoom. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your microphone and your video. We have a quorum this evening, so why don't we quickly go through and why am I not seeing everyone? Very odd. Why don't we go through and do a roll call vote? Eaching Scott?
Present.
Sally Dale?
Present.
Nick Rosettos?
Present.
Carrie Layton?
Present.
And I'm Dave Jerris. I'm present as well. We have with us a cast of thousands, as it were. We have our town planner, Taylor Herman. We have our recording secretary, Nancy Okari. We have, where did everyone go? Sorry, my Zoom is having problems showing me everyone. I thought I saw someone from engineering.
Brian Manter is here.
Oh, there you are, Brian. Yeah, hi, Brian. And we have a number of people from Civico and Causeway. So why don't we just jump right into our agenda? And the first item on our agenda are updates and minutes. Taylor, do you want to start off with any of your updates?
No substantial updates from town planner tonight. We'll have just a reminder to everyone here and to the rest of the community that there will be a public meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Town Hall in the Winchester room to go over the MBTA districts, MBTA 3A districts in more detail. And it will be an opportunity for anyone to ask questions and submit comments. I'll be there. Our consultants will be there, and some members of some or all. I don't know what the planning board's schedule is like, but some may be there as well. That's my only update.
I just wanted to mention, I just wanted to state for the record that I thought Taylor did an exceptional job managing the meeting last time, manipulating the maps in real time, and I just wanted to voice my opinion that you're appreciated for all that you do.
Thank you, Nick. I very much appreciate that.
I agree.
Everybody give a thumbs up for Taylor. I agree. Yeah. Any other updates from the board?
The only one I would have is that for all town meeting members who might be listening to this evening's presentation, heed what Taylor said about tomorrow night's meeting, and also pay attention to the Winchester Planning Board website on our work with Section 3A multifamily zoning, and also our work on North Main Street, and definitely plan to attend on Wednesday, January 23rd at Town Hall.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further updates, why don't we jump into our meeting minute approvals? Our first is for December 12th of last year. Are there any comments or corrections?
Sally has
Go
her
ahead,
hand.
Sally, please.
I have a correction to the others attending, and I have a correction on page 1, and I believe that is it. So on the others attending, I believe that others attending included Michael Wang from Foreman Place. And, oh, I see Emily Immis and Michael Wang. Okay, no, I'm sorry. And Jimmy Roche. Jimmy Rocha. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. They're all there on the list. I just didn't see them the first time. In item number 2 on this minutes where it says Miss Scott moved to continue, I believe you mean open.
Yes.
It was continued later. Yeah. So yeah, that was it. That was what I had for this minutes.
Okay. Any other corrections or comments? If not, I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 as amended.
So moved.
And is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Excellent. Roll call vote, please. I Ching,
Aye.
Nick,
Hi.
Carrie,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. And Sally, would you please pass those edits on to Nancy?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you much. Our next one is, there we go. Our next one is Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Any concerns or corrections or comments?
I just have one on page 2, item 3 at the bottom of the page, where it says, Mr. Herman, and the 3rd sentence, the current awning will also be replaced to match the existing, not exiting. Other than that, I have no changes.
Okay. Well, isn't the opening is exiting, but
Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong.
no, I'm just saying it's existing and exiting. It is leaving the scene.
Okay.
Is there any further corrections or comments? If not, I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes of January 9th, 2024 as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll
second it.
second. Or I think I Ching did, actually. Thank you, I Ching.
Okay, roll call vote. Sally,
Yes.
Carrie,
Aye.
I Ching. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Aye.
And I say is aye as well. And Sally, if you could pass that on to Nancy as usual, thank you.
Yes.
And then we have before us the minutes for January 16th, 2024. Any comments or corrections?
I have none.
If there are none from the other members, I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes of January 16th, 2024.
So move that.
And do we have a second?
Second, if I was not the motion.
Okay. Roll call vote, please. I Ching,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. And I believe that's the last one. Thank you, Nancy, for your excellent minutes. Really appreciate them. Now we are off to, we have a candidate for the Design Review Committee. The Planning Board has the honor of appointing I think 2 members of the Design Review Committee. So do we?
Yeah, you're correct. 2 in total, just one tonight.
Right. So Eileen, oh, I'm going to murder your last name, Eileen. I apologize. Eileen Cassiari, is Eileen able to unmute?
Eileen, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, I think that worked.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Why don't
yes,
you?
my name is Kashari. If I didn't quite hear how you pronounced it, but yes, Eileen Kashari.
So why don't you tell us a little about yourself and why you want to be on the Design Review Committee?
Hello, everybody. I am over 10-year resident of Winchester, and I am a registered architect for over 25 years of working in this field. I've been on the Design Review Committee since I believe 2016. And I would love to continue doing the work. It's really been a pleasure working with a group of folks on the committee that really have a passion for beautifying the town of Winchester, and really being responsible with good design and really preserving the character of Winchester. So I'd love to keep doing the work.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
I do. So thanks, Eileen, for your service. Appreciate it. I know that this position was specifically a landscape position, so I wonder if you can speak about that. I know there are different positions asked for from the design review committee, and I don't know much about it, so I maybe Taylor can fill it into, but why that there is a landscape component to this particular position. If you can speak on that.
I think that might have been an error. Taylor, do you have more information on that? Because I believe I'm in the architecture position. There is also a landscape architect on the committee.
So if it was an error, it was an error on your original your original appointment date. I did look out, or I did seek to find more information about why it was has been segmented the way that it has been. And historically, design review has not held, or the planning board has not, for their appointed positions, has not held true to the true definition of what is required of the appointees. In the past, they have just appointed based off of expertise in the field, longevity in Winchester, and general interest to serve the community.
Great. Thank you for that, Taylor. And I'll follow up to that. So I've been I've been on the planning board for 3 years now, and I've noticed, and I will speak mostly for myself because I've noticed that the design review committee and historical commission sometimes have different views, and in particular, in some recent cases, on historical aspects of the projects in particular. So I always intend to go to these meetings for design review committee. Just shortage of time. I haven't. So can you talk about those conversations and what it is that you think design review's role in determining the historical nature of projects that come before us?
I can't really speak to why there's differing of opinions. Just the fact that we're all designers with different perspectives, or historic consultants with different perspectives. I think we assume the historical commission has all the facts in terms of the origins of a structure, and we review their details that they share in terms of individual properties. I think as designers and architects and landscape architects, we really are looking at trying to preserve the historic makeup of the downtown area in particular. And I think when we rule, we really see these as significant properties, or not that we're ruling, but when we're advising, that there's specific properties that we find to be really important to the character of the town.
Sorry, one more follow-up, if
Sure.
okay. I also find that the design review committee it looks very much on the aesthetics of a project. So a very visual perspective of
Yep.
The things that come before us. And as a trained architect, I know that our planning board has a more holistic view on projects, so we need to consider the economic development of the town, as well as housing needs of the town, in other things. And so as an architect too, I just wonder from your perspective, the overall design is not merely aesthetic
No.
our training as architects. We need to consider some of the use of sort of the feel of the urban landscape and all that. And I just would love to hear from you beyond aesthetics, like what you think the design review committee and your role in it would be there.
Yes, I agree. It's not just about aesthetics. That's a piece of it. But we're there to advise responsible development and building. We're all in support of the goals of the town to increase housing for the downtown area in particular. And we just, I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to see and review options that really can make the best project. So I don't think it's just about aesthetics, and we understand the economic goals of the town.
And thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the board?
I have none.
Gary, Nick?
Nope.
I don't have any.
Okay, well then, I would welcome a motion to Taylor, what's the legal length of the term here so we get the motion correct?
Of course, I forget.
So I should note that Eileen is the sole applicant for this position, in case everyone out in TV land is wondering why we have a single candidate and we're moving to a motion so quickly. We just have one candidate.
And we're grateful for your continued service, Eileen.
Thanks, Sally. Nice to
Yes.
see you.
Yes.
Eileen, do you remember what your term length is? Oh, it's three members by the planning board.
Oh, okay. They get scattered around over years. It's hard
I
to
think it's
remember.
a 2-year term.
That is correct, 2-year term.
So I would welcome a motion to appoint Eileen Cashieri, sorry,
Good job.
for a 2-year term to the Design Review Committee.
I would so move.
I second it.
Jay is raising his hand.
We have
Oh.
a hand from our town council.
Jay,
Okay.
you can unmute.
Yeah, sorry, that was an error. I didn't
Okay.
raise my hand.
Just want to make sure. I feel like if council raises their hand, we should stop what we're doing.
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's a good way to live, Taylor. Thank you for that.
Always
Right,
better
thank you.
safe than sorry.
Good
Okay.
reflexes.
So we did have a motion for a 2-year appointment to the Design Review Committee. Is there will someone make that motion, please?
Yes, I think I did. I so
Yeah,
moved.
and
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Nick,
Aye.
I Ching.
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. Thank you very much, Eileen. And have a great 2 more years.
Thank you so much. I
Thanks.
appreciate the
Thanks,
opportunity.
So let us now transition our next item on the agenda, and I apologize, my internet connection is really breaking up this evening. We have a continuation of our public hearing on the Waterfield lot. So if someone would be so kind as to move to open that hearing.
I move to open the hearing for the Waterfield lot development, CBD
18.
permit application number 18.
I second the motion.
Okay, great. Roll call vote. Nick,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
I Ching.
Ching, you
Hey, Ching.
muted.
Aye.
And I say aye as well. Thank you all very much. Thanks to everyone from Civico Causeway who was with us this evening. I don't know if we have anyone from our 53G consultants this evening. Oh, I see someone from Tool. And is there someone from VHB is you guys. That's right.
Weston and Sampson will not be here tonight. They'll
Yeah.
present on the 6th. And Dennis, I don't see Dennis
Yeah, I don't see
here,
Dennis.
but he should be here as well. So we can start with Tool. But the first thing I would like to ask just before we get going is if everyone who wants to be able to speak from the development team, can you please raise your hand so that I can give you that privilege? All right, thank you. You should all be able to unmute, mute, share your screen. If you have any issue, please just raise your hand and I'll call on you. All right.
Okay, so we have this evening we're going to be going over two reviews or two yeah, I guess they are reviews. Yeah, this is the traffic and also design. And Taylor, if you would bring up the first, which I believe is the. So I don't know if there was, if you folks were planning on making a presentation, or were we just going to talk over these?
I think the guidance we received was that your consultants would give a report or update. But
Okay.
we submitted our responses to the traffic peer review on January 5th. And it was our understanding that Tool was taking a look at our responses.
Yep, but no one is going to be doing a presentation then. I just want to know. Okay, so why don't we go to the first one, which is, okay, what are we seeing here? This is not what I was expecting.
Well, Dee, I'm sorry to kind of interrupt here, but
Go right ahead.
I think the best process for us is to go over the peer reviews first. We have Erica here from Tool. I think hearing from Erica is going to be the best thing for us to get us started.
Yes.
If Dennis does come, that will be great. He'll follow that with his design peer review. If he doesn't, me, Dennis, and the whole development team had a meeting with him last week. I think that based off of our conversation we had in the previous planning board meeting, Sam, I think that you'd be able to maybe speak to some of the things that we talked about. If you're not comfortable with that, that's totally fine. But then we can go into some of the details that the development team has made based off of these two peer reviews. Does that sound okay?
Yes, it does. I was just I was looking on our screen. I thought I would see the actual report. So yes, if we could scroll to the report, I think what I'd like to have is that, and I'd like to also get engineering to provide us their input if they have any. So why don't we start off with the, yeah, so Erica, if you wanted to go ahead and give us I know you've given us an informal presentation a few weeks ago about before you finalize your report. If you want to just jump right in and give us an update.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I don't have a formal presentation this evening, as we mentioned, and I'll be respectful of everyone's time and just be here for mostly questions tonight. But just a quick overview of the process and where we are today. Again, my Erica Guidaboni, I work for Tool Design Group. I was hired to do a peer review of the transportation assessment provided by VHB, as well as the site plan around access and circulation. I attended a planning board meeting in October of 2023. I had provided an initial review of the traffic study back in October. My comments were generally around either requests for more information or more details, and also some recommendations related to circulation and access, bike parking, parking for EVs, things of that nature, kind of around the, understanding the context of the site and what the priorities are there, safety, being right next to a train station, transportation demand management, things of that nature. I received a response from VHB's and the team on January 8th. And generally, first of all, it was very thorough. All the things that I asked for details on were cleared up, and I feel really confident and comfortable with their responses. Any of the recommendations that I made were generally accepted. A couple minor details around the bicycle parking. It's still, most of it remains in the basement and not the first level. I prefer to not have bikes kind of on the ramp where vehicles will be in the parking garage. However, I do see that they're trying to make do with every inch in that space. And I think that there's a little bit more space to provide bike parking in that lower level. So I can understand it, and it's not a make or break comment, but it was one that was not directly accepted. And the other was around the materials on the sort of the back of the building. I was asking to use permeable pavers rather than mulch. However, they reported back that the abutter is looking to not encourage pedestrians accessing their private property. So I understand that comment as well. Otherwise, I saw the changes that were made to the site plan. They were around the fire access related to conversations with the fire code and fire chief. None of those created additional comments from me. So at this time, all of my comments have been addressed to satisfaction, and I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a comment from Winchester Engineering?
The engineering departments continue to review the materials provided.
I'm sorry, my internet really sucks this evening. My apologies. Brian, could you repeat that?
Certainly. So the engineering departments continue our review of the documents provided.
Okay, so it's still in process.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I guess Pacifico and Causeway, do you folks have any further comments on this? And then we'll go to the board and get their input, their concerns.
I don't think so. I think our consultant VHB, Mike Santos from VHB was here last time, and he gave a general overview of our updates. And he's here this evening as well, if you have any questions that we can address.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, I know that you raised your hand. If you want to go ahead, you may.
Thanks, Taylor. Sam, I just wanted to pop in. I know that Ms. Guidaboni said there was concern about bike storage at the first level, and in our revised plan, we've provided 6 spaces near the entrance at the ground level and 10 spaces more towards the rear at the ground level. So I just wanted to make sure that we've tried to respond to that, because I thought it was a good comment.
Yeah, and I would add to that we're well in exceedance of the requirement in the zoning bylaw for bike parking. So all of the parking in the basement is in excess of the planning board's of the town's requirements. So I think we would like to provide that. There's space for it, but if you'd like us to, if that's a safety issue or you have particular concerns about that basement parking, we're happy to discuss that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I don't have major concerns around it. I think, cyclists are going to be riding with vehicles everywhere else, and it won't be a high volume space, making sure you have visibility down there is important. I think it'll be fairly slow speed, everything like that. The preference is really to make sure that, we're encouraging people to not drive and maybe consider alternative modes and, providing them ample and convenient parking is what's most important. And I do agree that you have a really nice cross section of different types of bike parking. And I think it was done really thoughtfully. So I'm satisfied with this comment. I just wanted to acknowledge that it was slightly different than what I initially recommended.
Mhm. Yeah, and we certainly understand the concern there. And I would add that we were constrained on the ground floor level by the publicly accessible parking we had committed to that the town required. So given the space constraints, I don't think we could really fit more bike parking anywhere on the ground floor.
Okay, so I'd like to open it up to the board. If you have any questions or concerns, please go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, I know the public parking is part of the land disposition agreement, the purview of the select board, but I'm wondering if there's more information that we can hear about parking that'll be available to the public for people that want to patronize the businesses that are on Church Street and around the area. And I know that I thought Sam commented on that in relation to the biking, but I'm just curious to see if there's any more information on that.
Sorry, I just want to understand the question. Are you
Yeah,
looking for
I just wanted to
specific-
see how we're coming in terms of addressing the need for public parking for the businesses that are in that block, and not only in terms of an adequacy of parking, but the ability of people to park and then walk through to get to the businesses that are up on Church Street, and some of the ongoing issues that we're interested in making sure that they happen.
Yep. So what I would say is that, our general plan for the garage is to have a mix of parking for commuters and for short-term parking for, for people accessing businesses in the area. So we don't have an exact breakdown of spaces, and that plan is to be, our general plan has to be approved by the select board. So I think we had established last time that that was their domain.
Right. And I guess it's so what are the next steps then in terms of getting that plan over to them? Or again, just
Sam,
refresh
this is
my
Dave.
memory as to the timing of it all.
Yeah, I think our intention is Dave Forth with Causeway, and I think Joe can speak a little bit to sort of the pathways that we're providing for people who are visiting the businesses. But our intention is to get it over to the select board, I would say, in the next couple months.
And you
for
think there'll be
discussion
some
and approval.
permeability in terms of the ability to walk from the parking to the businesses?
Oh yeah, we can. I don't know if Joe is able or if there's time to share plans tonight, but we worked with the neighboring business owner to provide an access point, and are also replicating some of the sidewalks back there to get back to those businesses. So that's definitely a part of it. Looks like somebody's pulling it up now.
Would that be shown on your site development plan, Sam?
Yes, so our plan shows, you can see in the alley, there's a doorway exiting the garage. So that's to help people access the rear of 28 and 32 Church Street, I believe. But I think the owner of 38 Church Street did not want people cutting through their property to Church Street, and they are putting up a fence to effectively prohibit that. But as far as
is there any other pathway other than that? Do you know?
No, so I think really the the access we're providing is to the businesses that have an easement to that alley. And to any customers who would want to access the rear of 32 and 36 Church Street.
Okay, but do we have an easement that goes from the alley to Church Street?
No.
No.
No, no.
And there is not one there today. There's no easement.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's the fact that,
Anybody cutting through right now is just doing so informally.
right.
Mm-hmm.
In the traffic study, though, I mean, I think you name that it's going from a site that has parking for 87 vehicles and that we're going to have 71 that are available for public use, replacing that. So there's a loss and there's a pressure on it coming from the new residents of the building, and the the train station will reopen and all of that. But for Church Street access, Nick, I think people park on Church Street. So I think that I wonder if there was any comment that can be made from the traffic study that you did about where the traffic is sort of like, what is the movement? I'm assuming they're accessing more like Dags and kind of that side of the street, or, I see the accident report kind of comments on, whether the cars were sort of heading one way or another. Is there anything we can learn from the traffic study about where the pressure points are going to be for that either foot traffic or vehicle traffic? I'm imagining is there employee parking back there? Is that what we're going to lose?
I would
Yeah.
ask Mike Santos, can you speak to the traffic patterns?
Yeah, so the part, so we did reference, I know Tool did a really good job with a parking study a few years back for this area. So we used that heavily, we leaned on that heavily to understand what the parking regulations were in this area. So the parking spaces that are, kind of being lost are public spaces. They're publicly available spaces. So as you mentioned, there's 17 that we're going to be losing. And I also, I don't have that study right in front of me, but I do recall reading through it and, understanding that, a loss of 17 spaces, it's a decent amount of spaces, but the total, parking utilization throughout the entire, I guess, Winchester Center, it can absorb that loss with, with the usage that was reported on. And the traffic, as far as the traffic, I think it might be, we did do a trip distribution again. I don't have that right in front of me, but I think it was pretty evenly split kind of east and west on Waterfield Road. Maybe it more heavily favors going to the east towards Mystic Valley Parkway. So you might see heavier traffic movements from there. And then, the primary pedestrian movements that I think we'll see are, obviously people coming, going to and from the site to the various businesses, throughout Winchester Center. I also want to point out, you kind of see it here, but we're also looking to improve the crosswalk right in front of the site.
Right.
With curb extensions and everything that's kind of similar to the treatment that was done at the other end of Waterfield Road at Church Street. So, that we anticipate that'll probably be one of the heavier pedestrian movements. We're mitigating that condition too. And then also, through the site, obviously to the new commuter rail station will be a pretty good pedestrian movement for people that may live there and want to get on the commuter rail. And you can see right here in the site plan that there are some good pedestrian connections there too. So, and I think the design of this site, we did look at the pedestrian movements, from the site to external areas, and focused on making sure that they're safe, and upgrading any existing pedestrian facilities like the crosswalk right in front of the site. So I hope that answers your question.
It I think is a really thorough answer to my inquiry, but I'm wondering if that helps with Nick's concerns about the business.
No, I think it all sounds encouraging. And to Carrie's point, I I think that all those businesses have, most of them have back doors onto the site anyway. So even if there isn't an easement, where the old patisserie was, there's a back door. D'Agostino's has a back door. So I guess that helps alleviate the easement problem to some degree. But
Great.
that's helpful. Thank you so much for the responses.
Fortunately, Dennis Carlone just logged in.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
I wonder if we can focus on the bottom portion of the site. So it seems to me that the property is going to share some of the pedestrian traffic with the MBTA. So it's very tight it seems like the sidewalk kind of bisects both the properties. And there are 3 main passageways, and I understand, I think from this traffic report, that this driveway is not going to be often trafficked by cars, right? It will be a fairly slow flow of cars going across, so that, but from this image here, I see that the main sort of safe, more generous crosswalk is really towards the building. And I'm just thinking about how the general public enters the MBTA. Their main crossway would be the one sort of in the middle, because so these 3 knobs that sort of has a more capacity for sidewalk traffic seems to indicate that there are 3 possibilities to get to sort of a safe thing. And because your extrusion into the street here on Waterfield is towards the front of the building, I am assuming that people would tend to want to go across to that node in particular, right? So the one node here to the right, the furthest to the right one, doesn't seem to have a capacity for sort of, I mean, it doesn't have the drawings or sort of the brick paving for indicating pedestrian safety kind of a thing. So I'm just wondering what the thought process was. And to me, it feels like if someone who isn't residing in the building or parked in the building, and they're trying to get out of the station, and when these stations let out, it's just a flow of people, that the easiest and safest way might be to go towards Waterfield and then cross at the far end. But there isn't sort of a pedestrian indicator. There's no sort of wayfinding to indicate that would be the fastest, safest passage. You know what? Am I making myself clear? Is Erica? Would you be able to speak on that, or like how you see that?
What you're saying is that you think that pedestrians would typically, if they're not accessing the development site, would be utilizing the crossing kind of along the curb line of Waterfield Road. Is that correct?
Yes, because the stairwell seemed to sort of flow out that way, right? So the momentum would go towards the street and then cross.
And do you have I guess I would ask the team if they have a better drawing of what the driveway apron is intended to look like, so we can maybe discuss that crossing in detail a little bit further. So maybe this isn't a good image for this.
Any member of the team has the ability to share or should have the ability to share.
And if I can add, the second node also seems to have a transformer pad, and I'm not sure how it looks in person, but is that sort of a big giant thing, obstruction kind of a thing, so that pedestrians would sort of want to avoid this, uninviting object?
So it seems like there's a few different questions in there. Can we take them maybe one at a time?
Maybe one, what did you envision sort of the pedestrian flow of folks who are getting out of the T and not entering into the parking lot or the building, but just getting out?
Yeah. So I think you're correct that people will come down the stairs and straight out to Waterfield. We know that the MBTA is going to have a signage plan of their own to indicate wayfinding and directions for people accessing the station. We don't know exactly what they're proposing for signage. But it would probably be on their property or in the public way.
So
In terms of,
oh, so,
sorry,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. You can go ahead. Actually.
Oh, from Mr. Carlone's comments from last time, I think an indication of what is very public versus what's more private. I feel like this particular circulation pattern of people using the MBTA and then going towards the town would be a fairly important marker, either in the materiality or wayfinding to indicate that this is the path. This is the most public path and the most safe path for these folks.
So
And I don't see that here, is what I'm trying to tell you.
I'm sorry, I'm just confused. I want to make sure that I understand that on the common side of the property, the Waterfield Road side of the property, are you recommending or suggesting that it be explored that the crosswalk be moved down?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm asking the design team to kind of think about how that would be the most well-designed public space in some ways, right? Like that it should be a fairly pleasant space, a safe space, and a fairly obvious space for people to cross in order to get out.
So if when you say crossing, do you mean crossing the entry
Both
road
the
to the
driveway and Waterfield Road to get to the commons?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had similar concerns, and I'm worried that people will come off of those stairs and cut across
Right.
the parking area, just because there will be congestion. And I don't know if, one stair goes towards Waterfield, the other one goes in the other direction. So I presume people will go down in the other direction, then have to turn around and go to Waterfield. Is there some, way of putting a barrier, a nice looking barrier, which would try to get people not to wander into the parking area?
I think we're open to ideas, and we're, I think what you're describing is it needs to be a cooperation between the town and the MBTA and our development team, because there's our property, there's the MBTA property and the public property all involved in this
Right.
flow of traffic. So I think, that's a conversation we're happy to have. But it's not all on our property or within our ability to propose something.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents on this conversation. Just real quick from the team, can you confirm that the crossing of the driveway is concrete and material, so it matches kind of the sidewalk material? Or I guess what's the material choice for the crossing of the driveway at Waterfield Road?
I think Michael Laham from Horsley Witten could probably confirm that, but I believe it's the same material as the public sidewalk, and it's a flush sidewalk with a tip down
Apron.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's right, Sam.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And then I would just add on the idea that pedestrians will go across this parking lot. They will absolutely do that. That is not question in my mind that they won't do that. We all know people. It's the shortest path between 2 points, especially when you're getting off a train and you got your headphones on, you're just going for it. I would imagine, and I'd look to VHB and Mike Santos potentially to answer this question, but I imagine that the volumes in this driveway are going to be low enough that it is considered a safe shared use condition. So while I know you're not designing it to be a shared street, the volumes are gonna be so low that people are just gonna be really comfortable and they'll be slow. That it's just gonna be the nature of what this space is, that it is okay for it to be shared, and this is, the types of streets that we design all the time. So I don't think that you really need to stop human nature here, as long as we're thoughtful about some of those design components. I'm not saying you can't do some things to encourage people to go the way you want them to go. But I do think that barriers can be a little bit hostile. So it's something to think about as well, but my thoughts.
Yeah, so I'll just follow up with that. So yeah, we, in the traffic study, we did look at the trip generation, what the traffic volumes will be at this driveway. They're very low. I think the other issue here is that if, the publicly available parking spaces currently, I believe they, in the past, they may have been like 2-hour spaces. I don't think that they were used for like long-term MBTA parking. So I think it's really up to, and it might be up to the town. I'm not sure how this works, but how you designate those spaces. If those spaces are not going to be designated for long-term MBTA parking, you won't really have that, the conflicts, when people get off of the train, they'll all be driving out as well as, using the crosswalk. I don't think that will happen, as long as they're not designated as, long-term MBTA parking. I believe, they have plenty of that on the opposite side of the track. So I don't really see a lot of conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians here, just because of, it is going to be a very low volume driveway. And, just to point out, you can go out to Waterfield Road, and, the design of this crosswalk that we're showing, it's a standard ladder style crosswalk. It'll, have, highly visible white retro reflective pavement markings. That's pretty standard throughout the, Winchester Center, where you see much higher traffic volumes and, probably higher pedestrian volumes as well. So, and again, I don't have a lot of concerns with, safety there, just because of the low traffic volumes that we're expecting on the driveway.
Yeah. I'm just more thinking about the design, like sort of the natural path. The crosswalk here in the middle seems to sort of dive into a space that people probably wouldn't naturally want to go towards. They'll do more a diagonal towards the street, right? So I'm just thinking about more maybe when Dennis speaks, sort of a public space realm of how to make that a little bit more, I don't know, just incrementally lovely, and more sort of in tune with how people would naturally move. Thank you.
Any more comments? I'd like to dive into your electric vehicle plans, and I'm hoping you could explain the difference between the three types of let's see, you call them EVSE, EV ready, and EV capable. Could you describe what the difference between those three are?
Sure. And I think maybe Joe Haskett has more information on this, but this is in the stretch. It's in the 2024 IECC code has these definitions, and the EVSE is electric vehicle supply equipment, and that basically just means a charger is provided. The EV ready spaces are essentially completely ready to hook up to a charger. And then the EV capable spaces simply have conduit or the capacity to hook up, to add the equipment in the future.
So, EV stations are fairly large. So in the EV ready spaces, does that mean you've allocated space for the charging station? And for EV capable, I'm a little confused as the difference between EV ready and EV capable. So EV ready means you've got electrical outlets ready to plug in, and EV capable is you have conduits in which you could run electric. Is that
Maybe
kind
Sam,
of
I could jump in on this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
right,
please.
Joe?
Yeah. So the EVSE, as Sam correctly described, are you know, those are charging stations that are ready day one. You pull your car in, you plug in your electric vehicle. EV ready is those also have conduits with a circuit based upon the load that's required for that. And Chairman Jarius, I think that you bring up a good point about the spatial constraints. This is a new technology that is rapidly changing. Excuse me, and some of the ones that we're seeing now, and we're kind of spacing quite a few of our spaces on an exterior wall where you can mount these on the wall. And so the size of them is not like when you see the particular Tesla ones that are much large and they're kind of almost like a, you know, when you go to you know, vacuum your car out, you know, you got this vacuum cleaner
Right.
pedestal. They're similar like that. So I share your concern that they're large, but that the equipment that is coming out is much smaller. And so we're kind of providing for that, but the EV Ready provides a conduit with an electrical conduit. EV Capable also provides the conduit, but you also, maybe not necessarily the circuit, but you still have to provide the load that, excuse me, that eventually would need to be had if you were fully serviced in all of these spaces. So this is as Sam said, this is an IECC 2024. And also, if we do pursue this, these are things that we're trying to take into account.
So what are, you know, can you give an idea of, are these like level 3 charging stations, level 2? I'm throwing out words that I don't quite know the meaning of, but I read headlines. So are we talking about like, you know, do you have the capacity to put in, you know, an 800 kilowatt hour charger in here, or are these going to be the slower chargers?
You know, that's a very good question. And I think that I don't know. The answer to your question is, I don't know.
Joe, I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've done, you know, we're at the beginning of stages of planning these, but we've just installed 23 charging stations in Hamilton at a property we own. All the sort of residential scale stuff that we do are level 2 or level 1. Level 3, as I understand it, are the superchargers that, you know, Tesla puts out and that kind of stuff super fast. And that's not what you really see in a residential setting. And so a level 2 charger that we can either mount it on the wall in front of the parking spot if that's appropriate, or it comes on a pedestal that you've probably seen ChargePoint or other sort of public locations. So level 2 is usually what we aim for and what the utility will supply here.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions from the board?
Specifically on the tool design comments and the response to them?
Yes, please.
Well, the one thing I had on Waterfield Road, and you can see this on the site development plan, where the MBTA and rideshare loading zone is located. And then there was a reference, and it might have been in the design review, about where else would loading be taking place. So we can address that there. But if this is the loading zone for, you know, grabbing a cab with putting your suitcases in the cab or something to go to the airport, or picking up a friend and zipping off, that's fine. But if it's a loading zone for move in, move out, I think that's really inadequate. And I wouldn't necessarily think that it would be great to have it on Waterfield Road anyway. So it might be that I'm advocating for the exploration of moving that sidewalk south, or not south, east. I think it's east. South. North, yeah, east. To line up with the sidewalk that is on the most east side of the site. I know you lined it up to go into the entry to the building, but I Ching raised such a good point about the majority of the traffic wanting to cross Waterfield Road. might be doing so coming out of the train station. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm concerned
Could you
about
just,
loading and I'm concerned about crosswalks.
can we, Taylor, can you point out the area that Sally is describing? I'm having a hard time figuring out where it is.
Right,
It's that,
so that
You can see my
bump
cursor.
out
It's
right
right
there,
here.
it extends to a
Okay.
crosswalk on sheet C2. That bump out extends to a crosswalk that goes across to the common. And it
Oh, I
meets,
see it. Yes.
meets a
Okay.
bump out on the other side. And given that there's so little loading space for loading into the building, you think about Amazon Prime delivery trucks and people moving in and DoorDash or whatever, whether that bump out should be moved to the lower, where your arrow is now. And it goes across to the common in that area instead, and it would allow more loading zone closer to the face of the building and also be located closer to the MBTA adjacent sidewalk, that people would be less inclined to cross the driveway to get to the sidewalk. I mean, Winchester traffic at certain times of day can be very dense, and having a crosswalk has been a really useful thing in Winchester Center.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. I think we tried to convey this in our response to comments, but regarding the loading for residents, I think our intent is for them to use the rear of the site. I don't know if you can scroll over to the left there.
Yeah, good.
So you can see there's this back where the dumpster is. There's sort of a pull-in area back there near the rear stair that vehicles can park in. That's only going to be occupied when a trash truck is picking up the dumpster, but otherwise, move-in trucks can park there, and they can also back up into that notch area if needed to maneuver. So we were figuring that moving trucks would use that rear area and not the street. So I don't know if that addresses your concern.
Well, it does address my concern. I don't know what those 3 dots are. They might be bollards to keep you from backing into the building.
Yeah.
But it gets to the building management manual, which it's not within our scope to talk about that right now, but I would hope that documented practices would be documented so that move-ins occur in that location, so that there's no blocking of Waterfield Street. And but I still, going back to the common side of the site, fit to window, which is now off the screen, I think. The idea that I mean, I know parking is at such a need for parking in Winchester, that wherever you put the bump out and wherever you put that striped parking, it will take away on-street parking. So I still want to advocate for there to be a loading zone in the front of this building, and the bump out being down to the east. And that the building management documentation require that move-in loading and unloading happen in the back. So can that happen? More,
Can I just weigh in on the, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
please do, Erica, thank you.
Yeah, so just in terms of the bump out and the location of that crosswalk, I would advocate for leaving it where it is. I understand where you're coming from, and that there's a lot of challenges around, placing these, and there is an impact to on-street parking when you put in a bump out. I think the bump out's really important for visibility's sake. It is a mid-block crossing. And the reason I like it there, I mean, a big part of it is you want to flow people into the common, instead of, if they're to the east, they're against the train abutment, which is like, it's getting redone and it's going to be a little bit nicer, but I don't think that's where people are really going to be wanting to walk, and you really want to have that vista point of like your beautiful town common.
Right.
So I would recommend keeping it where it is.
And actually, where it is right now lines up with Laraway Road, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's correct.
And there's a
Yes,
long
that's
town
correct.
sidewalk. There's a long town sidewalk at Laraway, so I can see what you're saying. Okay. So perhaps my biggest concern is the loading, move in, move out.
And Sally, just to mention, you know, I know that our engineering department is still working on their thoughts, but
Right.
they would agree with Erica based off of our
Mhm.
conversation so far.
That's great. That's helpful. Thank you, Erica. The only other thing I would say is that I know that the bike parking capacity is a mix of public use bikes and resident bike parking. And I don't know if they'll be delineated that these are for resident bikes only or whatever. But regardless, even though the bike capacity exceeds what we have in our code, being a forward-looking board, is there any place else to put bike racks? And they would very likely be used not by the residents of the building, but potentially be used by people who rode their bike into town from, you know, a mile and a half away to pick up to do a trip. We're trying to get the cars out of the village.
I do want to point out that we were in touch with the MBTA about their bike parking plans, and they shared with us that I believe they're going to have capacity for something like 88 bicycles within within a key access room. So anybody with a Charlie card can access that room and leave their bikes there. So that's a great asset that they're adding.
Right. And it may be that the conversation that I'm embarking on here is better taken up with the town, that more bike racks be installed on public realm locations around the center. Because this isn't really public realm here. It feels like it, but it's not technically.
Yeah. Sally, I agree with you. I think that should be taken with the town. There's definitely a lack of bike parking in the commons. My son parks and then locks his bike to the new fountain benches, and when he needs to go to pottery class. And so he's looked all over, and there's only maybe, very few.
Okay, so this is an opportunity to talk to the select board about bike parking expansion throughout the center. That's very helpful. Thank you. I don't know if I have any other comments. Oh, well, no, the west side of the building, this whole discussion about the permeability of that block that runs along Church Street. If that easement, or that's not even an easement, if that driveway is to be fenced off, I think that, well, this is starting to get into Dennis's comments, so maybe I should just hold off. Thank you. I'm sorry.
We have about 35 minutes left, although we did start 5 minutes late, so we could probably go over another 5, so maybe 40 minutes just to keep us on schedule. I want to pick up on something that Sally mentioned, and that is Grubhub sort of, delivery. And I imagine that you've got 57 or 53, however many units you've got, you're going to have a reasonable number of vehicles doing delivery in the evening hours. And I would imagine that most of them are probably going to be going into the parking lot to deliver to that main entrance rather than parking on Waterfield and walking across that little plaza to the main building.
That's the
So
lobby, Diab, right there. It says lobby.
yes. So, but I imagine they're going to be pulling into that. And so I wonder if there's, again, going back to procedures, is trying to encourage, I encourage those drivers to use the parking lot rather than Waterfield to make their deliveries. Because I just don't see how Waterfield's going to be able to accommodate those drivers as well as the people parking to get to the businesses that are right on Waterfield. Is
Well,
that,
given
have,
that, yeah, that would take away the loading zone that's outside the lobby paved area, and that would be good for the town to take away
oh,
that.
I'm not talking about taking that away.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't think I'm just saying that I think there's just gonna, if you have, imagine that you have, 10 people getting their food delivered in the evening, you're just not gonna get them all to fit. So is there, I wonder if Civic on Causeway, is that part of how your management plan and how you deal with that sort of delivery?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a conversation we'd have with the management company. I don't know if any other members of the team want to comment on how we would.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
direction.
yeah, the biggest thing that we can do to encourage where delivery drivers go is to provide the least amount of friction to get it in the door. Because literally all we can convince them to do is open a door and throw a package in. The idea of, lockers and all this other stuff was nice in theory, but doesn't happen in actuality.
Yeah.
So you can see in the mailroom, there's a door right there, out to the outside. And that in part is so that they can come around, park in one of those spaces, and then just throw it in the door. Literally what's going to happen, as opposed to being in the lobby. And so we're still going to get, I mean, we'll do our best. The real challenge in deliveries these days is it's never the same delivery driver.
Right.
It's always somebody different, with the exception maybe of UPS. And so we kind of just have to provide the least amount of friction and good signage.
So with those spaces that are along the sidewalk on the MBTA side of the site, there's 4 + 3 is 7. Are those envisioned to be public parking spaces available for delivery drivers?
They're public spaces, and we will be working on that parking plan and presenting it to the select board about how that will all work.
Okay. So I
Um,
don't have any other concerns about this right now, I think. I'm not sure. I want to hear what Dennis has to say.
I have one last question, and that's something that Tool recommended looking at was a Zipcar space, and then your response, you didn't actually address that. So is Zipcar still a thing? And is it something that can be accommodated?
I think we determined that it is. We've been, we got a proposal from them quite a while ago, and they recommended having at least 2 zip cars there, just for convenience, I guess, and cost effectiveness. So that's kind of their minimum. And again, I think that would be up to the select board to weigh in on whether they'd like to see that.
So this would be in the public spaces rather than for the residents.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So anybody in Winchester could use that zip car, not just the people that live in this building.
Oh, yes, yep.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and
So one of the interesting ideas that have come up in discussions with other developers is the concept of providing some sort of a discount on public transportation as part of the people's rent. So like a Charlie card or a discounted Charlie card, so that it would get people to not have vehicles. Is that something that might become part of your management plan?
I think we can look into it. Yeah, we'll get back to you.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I know there's a concern by some people about the number of vehicles allotted to residents, and if there were a program in place where residents could have an incentive not to have a car, then I think that would alleviate some of the concerns.
I would just piggyback on that and say that I have seen it in places where they'll provide your first month of a Charlie card and provide you the Charlie card so that you now have one and it's kind of been loaded up to get you kind of used to that. That's an option as well. It's maybe not as, committal in the long term, but an option that could be looked into in a little bit easier potentially. I did ask about unbundling the parking. It's a nice idea to have people not have to pay for a parking space essentially through their rent, which is obviously subsidized by the rental of the home. I believe there's the response I got was something around the kind of tax credit code or something with regulations that you're not able to do that. But I wonder if there's somewhere in the middle, if they let you know they are not going to use their parking spot, like what can we do with that spot that they're deciding to not use is maybe something to consider and think about. Give them a credit for a Charlie card or something.
So do I understand, Erica, that you're saying that the financing regulations associated with the numerous financing sources for this project include rules that say you can't uncouple the parking from the apartment?
Yes, the response I got from VHB, so potentially they could weigh in, or someone else on the team, was that due to tax credit financing rules, the parking for the affordable resident units cannot be unbundled from the units.
Okay, I see.
For the affordable units, I think we could still do it with the market rate units.
I think that would be a good thing to do. Just and allow people who are in market rate units to decide if they want to pay the monthly parking cost of the remaining spaces that are designated.
Sure, there's people that, somebody might want more spots and then, they can pay for that. And it allows for someone that is choosing to not own a vehicle to get some savings there.
Right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Should we hear from Dennis?
Yes, I was about to do a final go around. Are there any other questions vis-a-vis the traffic? And I'm guessing not. So
Well,
why don't
I'm gonna just jump in on one thing. Did I see in Erica's report the suggestion that the intersection of Waterfield and Church be explored as an all-way stop? Was that in your report, Erica?
I don't think that I ended up bringing that up.
Okay.
I think it was discussed sort of, I looked into that idea. I didn't end up reporting on it. I felt
I don't know
that
where I saw it then.
there was honestly the amount of queuing you would have on Church Street would be detrimental to the neighborhood. Honestly, I didn't think it was a good idea. Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. I think at this point, thank you very much, Erica, and thank you, everyone from VHB. Why don't we have Dennis with us? So why don't we switch over to the design review?
If you could leave this drawing up, I'd appreciate it.
So Dennis, if you could lead us through, we have about a half an hour. So
Sam,
Dennis
would anyone on your
drawing
team
to stay up?
Yeah. Sam, would anyone on your team be able to share the elevations?
Yes.
I mean, Dennis, is this parking plan really the one that you want to?
I wanted
present
to,
on?
thank you, Taylor. I wanted to comment on what was just discussed. The curb that comes up to the sidewalk height at Waterfield will also come down on the other side of that concrete sidewalk. You could easily make that crossing a wider sidewalk crossing. Yes, you would lose some planting at the lower right-hand corner of the parking area, but there's no doubt in my mind, and Erica indicated this, this is a parking lot. And what happens now into the existing parking lot or the garage? People walk wherever they feel they should walk. Somebody mentioned going from one point to the other. So number one, that sidewalk crossing should be wider. And then the slope down to the entry road level. So that makes a difference there. I think the crosswalk in the middle will never be used. And as you read in my report, I think the pavement should be different in this zone. This will have less traffic than almost anywhere else in the town. But then we can get back. Oh, what else did I write? Move-in trucks. If you know any movers, and I do, they will insist on parking as close to the building entry or elevator as possible. And they will be adamant about that. And unless you have somebody working in the lobby directing them, that will never change. Same with drop-off, Grubhub and whatever. That's just who they are. They're paid on an hourly. The bike storage that Sally brought up on the other side of Waterfield, Larrabee Road at the edge of the Commons, that's the logical location to max out there, no matter what the MBTA does. And Zipcar, as Sam indicated, is very much alive. I know the founder, and she's retired, but they're in Europe now. That's how big that is.
Right.
Okay, I'll go to my comments now, and I know we don't have a lot of time, which seems to always be the case, but so be it. So my contract says basically, how can we make this project fit in as best as it can? How can we maximize opportunities, public spaces if possible? How can we be a good neighbor? And I'll be honest, what the development team has been given is number one, maximize parking. Number two, maximize affordable housing. And you have more parking on the site than I've ever seen on any project, even in cities. It's like every inch, and I give credit to the designers to try to make that work. This, unless you consider what I've said, will say soon, will not be a friendly place. It'll look like a driveway, and for what that's worth. There are a lot of limitations on this site, including the MBTA, the MWRA, access to the back of the existing building. Given all that, and I told the development team this, they've come up with as good of a scheme in principle that you can come up with on this site. And the fire department setting the building back at Waterfield, which is a shame, but it is what it is. They have squeezed in everything they could to meet the program that has been requested. So my comments are focused on how to make this better, even if I say give up something, how to knit the building together. To me, this driveway is as much a courtyard, forecourt to the building. As a teenager, that's where I would be, throwing a football to my friends. Yeah, you can go to the common, I get that. But we could walk to the park a block away. We always played in the street. At arrival time, the end of the day, there will be more people crossing this driveway than cars in the driveway or cars in the building. And I think we have to recognize that this is an opportunity for the town and the development team to make this arrival point feel special and not as a driveway. And I think that can be done. And I'll get to that. Let's see here. Well, you don't have to switch the plan, Taylor. The basement floor right now doesn't have mechanical venting. The development team, architects are hoping they won't need it. But if it does need it, the venting location will be key to bring up and discuss. I'll leave it like that. The first floor plan, again, I'm a little in awe of what has been accomplished. But as I mentioned, the station courtyard opportunity, as I talk about it, more strongly indicating this is a 5 mile per hour zone. Sam mentioned he thought with the raised curb and the shortness to get into the garage that this in essence would be 5 miles per hour. There's always a jerk out there, and that's where the accidents occur. Treating the ground, at least to the major crosswalk, with the pedestrian pavers that were proposed on the above alley, the alley leading to the back of the existing building, is what we normally do. In fact, what I recommended for Converse Road on another project, to make as many roadways that will have as many people as cars to be treated differently than asphalt. So I'll leave it like that. Let's see here. Further articulation is, oh, that's later, sorry. If we can go to the landscape plan. Thank you. So there's the articulation on the above access road that's been widened for the fire department. Sorry. So what I'm recommending is that is an access road without pedestrians. That should be asphalt, but the one down below, ideally to the major crosswalk, if not to the minor crosswalk, should be similar paving. People are going to be there. It tells cars to slow down. This is not only an access road. The proposed plan is approximately 93% non-porous, 4% mulch, 3% planted zones with only 4 trees on the entire site. My drawings were not to scale. I believe the site is close to an acre. If we're trying to reduce flooding potential, increase precautions against climate change, we got to do better than that. And what I'm suggesting is at the bigger crosswalk in the middle of the courtyard, the sidewalk adjoining the parking area, that gets removed. And up a bit on the other side, I see the pointer floating around along the garage. Who is ever working the pointer?
I think it's Taylor.
Yeah.
Nope. Right.
Go to the
Right.
major crosswalk. This is why I don't like
Okay.
Zoom meetings.
Can you say it again?
Okay, along the garage facing the courtyard, facing the parking lot, to the left,
He's talking about
Yes.
the 2 parallel parking spaces.
along the
these.
but that
Yeah.
sidewalk and the bump out by the crosswalk could be planted. Frankly, should be planted to soften this. I recommend, and I know this is a big thing, that 1 or 2 parking spaces on the outside get removed. Additional trees are planted. I know it's a big issue. Frankly, parking lots don't make a town center. Parking lots are great. and every town thinks they need parking, and I know the selectmen said they need parking. You need green desperately here. So you can decide on that as you see fit. But those are 3 recommendations that I feel are important. So when I say enhance public arrival and safety, that's the paving that is at the sort of entry courtyard and the raised driveway, the one leading to the back of the existing building. We have roads like that in other cities and towns, and traffic is slowed down on purpose. It's recognized. We're thinking of doing that in portions of Harvard Square now. Mass Ave, at least we're talking about it in Cambridge. I mentioned the transformer that was brought up by the board. Nobody knows the size. It all depends on what they have available. I'd like to think it will be small. I've seen 8-foot transformers on residential properties, and it needs to be shielded better than sumac bushes. But that again is up to you all. You don't have to go to the second floor, but on the second floor plan, there's the courtyard, and we had a very good discussion about that. The development team is proposing to put private terrace areas, I guess I would call it, around the units that have doors leading out to that, leaving the bulk of the courtyard available for the whole building and the adjoining community room. They are going to use planters to delineate, raised planters to delineate those spaces and add planting to the rest of the courtyard. It's not designed. There is a question whether they'll also put decking on top of the concrete. What's interesting is you will see this courtyard from the MBTA station. So it is in public view, but it's definitely a private space. Again, something to consider. If we could go to the Waterfield Road elevation, that's A201.
Sam, I don't have the elevations pulled up. Could your team do that? If not, I'll get it.
I have them and can share them if you'd like.
Go ahead, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? Oh, there we go. All right. Share. There we go. And Dennis, sorry, which sheet did you want to see?
A201 to start with.
There you go.
Thank you. So what I'm going to comment on is the upper left-hand facade. It's the most public oriented, obviously. It faces the Commons. It faces Waterfield Road. This is slightly set back because of the fire department's needs. It's a very handsome facade, and I give the developer and architects credit for that. What I recommended is in the guidelines that facing public roads and public spaces, the bottom looks like 18 inches or so should be granite. It's not a long extent. It just turns the corner for, Joe knows, maybe 45 feet or so.
That's right.
You'll notice on this facade that the second and third floor windows have trim that sort of combines it into a 2-story window treatment, which breaks the monotony of punched windows down. That's excellent. And they have a continuous sill at the top floor window going through. So when I thought of most of the building, which is concrete clapboard and trim, and it's pretty much the same punched window everywhere, I thought, how can we learn from the front building to do relatively minor changes to enhance those facades? So the next one would be A201 West. Oh, sorry. It's here. I apologize, the one below. So this is facing. See, actually, I think of this as south, but I do think this is west. This is facing Rangeley Woods, Rangeley Road Woods.
Correct.
And what I'm suggesting here is using what's on the front facade, not changing it to brick, is kind of add that vocabulary. There's a slight, very appropriate forward portion on both sides that sort of frame the inner 6 windows across. They're out, I'm guessing, 18 inches or so, Joe, about that.
It's about right.
Maybe 2 feet, I can't tell. So what I'm suggesting is that on the 1 bay to the right and the 3 bays to the left, the portion of the facade that's forward, that the second and third floor windows get trimmed together like the brick facade just above it. So there's a difference between going across looking at this whole facade with those pavilions are a little further articulated, and the top floor in between, the sill goes across, or something to that effect.
No,
I have no doubt the architects and developers know what we're after, and they can come up with what they think makes sense. On probably don't go to it, but the Church Street elevation that you would see through buildings is similar to this lower facade and a similar treatment there. But the more important one is what I call the MBTA entry courtyard elevation, which is the bottom elevation. Thank you, Joe. And I think right away you might know what I'm going to talk about. We have the brick entry pavilion and part of the wing in brick, and the granite that I talked about at the base of the entry area would die right after the doorway that has a canopy over it. I don't know if you can point that out, Joe. I'm not saying all the way to the right. Keep going to the right. That door, yes. So it is not a long one, but it's an edge that says this edge is in view of Waterfield Road. And it just adds a little element of character there. But the big thing is concrete has no place facing the MBTA station. The MBTA station is stone. This is a very public facade, and it will link the 2 brick portions of the building. I'm not suggesting changing the concrete that you see on the very, very left of the bottom of this elevation or above on the Church Street that you see there, which someday might have vents in it, but we don't know, or facing Rangeley Forest. Joe has mentioned and showed me an example of using an acrylic finish. I have used the stain finish. In fact, Brownstone uses stain finishes because Brownstone has all tones unfinished. Let's see here. So as you heard last time, the design review committee would like to maximize brick, maximize the building so it looks more like a mill building. I understand that. But frankly, given what this development team is doing, responding to town requirements, maximizing affordable housing, maximizing parking, public and private. Near T stations, we no longer require parking in many parts of Boston and Cambridge. Not we, they. No parking is required. The developer decides. moving the building back, all these things, it seems to me that if we get the brick on the garage, get an acrylic, face this elevation, get acrylic on the concrete at a color that makes sense, get the granite edge, and trimming out the clapboard as I discussed in a color or colors that are sympathetic, background colors, but sympathetic to the brick. I think that would be a great achievement. So lastly, I'm going through this as fast as I can, so I might be forgetting something. This is not on the drawings. Obviously, I think the service road should be using street lamps that the city uses. It's publicly accessible. And it will be more in the town manner, if you will, town building, as I call it. Whereas the building should be unique to the building, whatever the architects and developer wish to use. But a key thing is blocking the light that comes through the vents of the garage, both facing rangely and facing the MBTA. And that can be done by having the vents oriented away. So in this drawing, they would be oriented left, not down. And orienting lights in the garage so they go inward, not outward. I wrote that.
Mhm.
And so signage, lighting, private housing courtyard design, possible softening techniques to vibration and sound impacts of the MBTA, and then following it in the future where changes would occur or bidding would indicate a change. That's really it. There's some unfinished lines on the drawing of sills or cornices and all that. I believe I understand what the intent is, and it's all positive. So those are my comments. But a lack of green, this isn't Boston. This is Waterfield in Winchester. And I think that is an issue. Thank you.
Wow.
I will say we had a good discussion with the development team and Taylor. Some of my comments were challenged, and I welcome it now, if they so wish.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I'm going to try again. Sam, would your team like to respond? Thank you, Dennis. I said that, but apparently I was on mute.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. And yeah, and I would say, we had a productive discussion with Dennis late last week. And, generally, we understand where the comments are coming from. And I think we're going to try to come back to you with more of a formal response in between now and next meeting, and attempt to address these comments. Specificity. Okay. Joe, do you have anything to add, or Dave?
No, I just wanted to thank Dennis for his comments. I think, he's in an unenviable position to provide his comments. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate his thoughtful comments. And I think that this is a process, and we're going to take his comments into consideration. As the architect, I'll work with ownership, and I think that we can come back with a solution that I think will satisfy not only Dennis, but I think the board. So again, it's a process, and we look forward to responding in fashion. So thank you for your time.
And I'll just add, I think one thing, one is just the timeline. I think we're gonna try and, get to the root of these as quickly as we can. But we also understand that as the design progresses, I think Dennis, you said in our meeting, you don't disappear after this. That
I hope not, but I've been
well,
held.
there's maybe that we would welcome an ongoing sort of design discussion past the approval, which is what we're typically used to having is, because we can't necessarily pin everything down immediately. And some things just get conditioned and, as design progresses, we continue the conversation. So, yeah.
So David, Diad, can I respond?
Yeah, I was just wondering what's the best way we could give feedback considering that. And so, yeah, I wonder if each member of the board could we'll just go around, and if you could provide your feedback on Dennis's report and where you think the project should go, and maybe that way that could be taken into account. So go ahead, Sally.
Well, I wasn't going to respond specifically to all of the comments of Dennis Carlone, although I read his report and I think that his comments make sense to me, and it will be great to see a revised set of drawings. I don't think that the plans change a lot, except as they need to reflect changes to the elevations. Although the site plan might change if that's what I'm hearing. But the concern I have is perhaps what David has. I thought that you are in a position that you need to have the planning board vote by a certain day, that it would be approving this early percentage plan, possibly with conditions. And what is that date?
We will be voting on this on our next in 2 weeks.
So on the 6th.
That's correct.
Okay, so that means that whatever we agree with from our peer reviewers, that can't be figured out in time for whatever is available to show us on the 6th, would be conditioned, as David said. Is that right?
I believe that is the correct.
Okay, just trying to understand it. Because it's a short window and then there's a lot to consider. And there's possibly a lot of work at the.
If I could add, that is very typical in PUDs or special permits, that the notes with your blessing become the basis for the future. It doesn't mean it better be the way I wrote it. It's addressing those issues that
Right,
you.
right.
Yeah, I think that from my perspective, and basing this on Dennis's work, I don't see any dramatic changes at hand. So I think that the board would be, I don't see that we would have an issue putting conditions saying that, as long as there are no substantially different changes other than what we've discussed, or at least in that
Right.
in that vein. Let me jump in. I do have a couple of quick comments that I'd like to make, and I really, Dennis, I didn't find anything in your report that I had any disagreements with. Actually, I agreed with much of it quite adamantly. I really do see the parking area. I like to think of it as a plaza. You called it a courtyard. I think of it as a plaza, which is more pedestrian, like a mu as you wanted to have over on Converse Place. And I think that would be my preference there. In terms of I like the way you're handling the difference in materials. I'm not really concerned about having this building look like a mill building, just because we've never had a mill building downtown. I don't know that it's historically.
Well, actually, that's not true. 10 Converse was a mill building, and I recall it being brick at one point in time. But
Okay.
that's
Well,
but
then I
anyway.
take that back. But other than downtown, I think that we don't think of downtown as being industrial. And so certainly anyone looking at the existing 10 Converse building might disagree, but I think having something which looks residential with brick, I think would work well. So I don't know that I personally don't see the need to have brick on the entire building. And other than that, I didn't understand some of your comments on the Rangeley Forest, but I understand what you were getting at in terms of bringing in articulation. And so that's about where I will leave my comments.
I'm excited to
Else on
see
the
the
board?
articulation refinements, the materials that you mentioned, granted where appropriate, and I like I guess the whole thing. I'm not sure how much brick you need, but it is nice to have those sort of articulated refinements that evoke a like a mill style building in the places that it occurs.
I want to thank Mr. Carlone for mentioning and emphasizing how difficult this project was with the programmatic needs of so much parking and very deep affordable housing capabilities that our town needs. And so, I also applaud the developer for coming up with really great design to accommodate those very two specific difficult combinations on top of an environment that was very politically difficult for the town. So really appreciate you sticking with it and refining. And from what I've seen too, it doesn't seem like there are huge significant changes necessary for us to help this go forward. And I would be okay with conditions put on next time we meet to meet some of these suggestions from the consultants and discuss them. And I think significantly the landscaping portions of it, the meeting some environmental conditions that could be more maximized, right? Like, I don't know about permeable paving or such substitute would be possible in these conditions, but I know it's really tight, especially with parking restrictions here. But changes the materials, I think, to delineate, especially the major pedestrian crossing here. And thanks, Dennis, I agree that the furthest left crossing would be the most used and maybe continuity of that different materiality there and a widening of the sidewalk and maybe kind of surgically figuring out a better landscaping would be helpful for those things. But those aren't deal breakers here at all. And I would hope that we can move forward so that we can get this to the best way possible, but also be mindful of timing.
Carrie?
Yeah, I
Sally?
agree with everything everyone said. That's going to be a very large building in downtown, and that attention to sort of making sure that its sort of visual presence is as harmonious with downtown is great. I do want to call out the suggestion that you get a couple of trees in the parking lot. It'll be hot in the summer, and it's always nice to have shade, whether it's over the cars that are parked there, or the kid throwing the football, or when it's raining and they're waiting for someone to come out. Other than that, I think this project has moved some big mountains, and I think it's exciting, and we're getting there.
Okay. Did I miss anyone from the board? Okay, then I think we are good to go then. We look forward to some refinements for the design that the team will work on between now and 2 weeks from now. We are hopefully going to be getting the stormwater peer review done, get it in-house. Taylor, do we have an idea of when that might be coming in?
Stormwater should arrive next Monday, or I have a meeting with them to go over it next Monday. We'll be able to share it with the development team immediately after, and then we'll try to turn that one around as quickly as possible. So I would say late next week at the earliest, but
Okay.
certainly within the next 2 weeks.
Well, we've only got 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
yeah. And Brian, can you give us an idea of when engineering will be done reviewing what it has in front of us and whether that will clear your plate so you can start looking at the stormwater?
Yeah, I believe that the timeline that Taylor outlined is aligning with how the engineering department will complete our review.
Okay. One of the things that we did ask board members to think about is any specific conditions they were interested in seeing and they were concerned about. I know that one of the conditions that we will be putting in there is about the water main that's going to come down Waterfield Street. And that's something that the town is in the LDA for the developer to handle. So that will be one of the conditions. I don't think this is news to anyone. I sure hope it's not. But if there are other further conditions that board members wish to have that they think they want to put in, would you please send them to Taylor so that we can run them by town council, etc.
And
If
Diab, when would Taylor need those from us?
he sent out email a couple weeks back asking for them to be for this evening. But why don't we try to get them to Taylor by Monday of next week? And so I think that if you wanted to look at the peer reviews that we've seen already, if you think that there are things that need to be addressed, write those down and please get them to Taylor. And then you can bundle them all together.
Yes. And discuss them at the board meeting.
Yep. Okay, so if there's nothing further, I would love to, we need to continue this to a time certain, which I believe is February let me make sure I can read my calendar, February the 6th at 7:30. Is that time okay with everyone?
Yeah, I think that's a good time.
Okay, could I get a motion to that effect?
I move that we
I so
continue
move.
this. Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Nick.
I move that we continue the discussion of Waterfield to the 6th at 7:30.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Carrie,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
I Ching,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. Thank you very much to our consultants. I think Erica has left us, but also to Dennis. Thanks to Civica and Causeway, your whole team, and VHB. Really appreciate you stopping by. And
One
we will.
sec, Taylor, is that date right? I thought we met on the second and fourth Tuesdays. Do I have that wrong?
We are meeting. Well, that is.
This is a special.
Oh,
meeting?
It is a
yeah,
special date.
yeah, that was the wrong date.
So because of a bunch of MBTA changes over the we've basically been meeting every week.
Okay.
We may, so yes, it's technically a special meeting, but
Okay.
for the month of February, we're doing the first and third weeks.
Okay, gotcha. Great.
Yep. Thank you for
Okay.
clarifying though.
But February 6th is the correct date.
Yes.
So good. Okay. So we're good on that. Excellent.
Okay.
So thank you all again, and we move on only 15 minutes late to our next item. Taylor, you want to pop up our agenda for those who've forgotten? need to regain control of the screen. And so we have 4th Street preliminary subdivision. And then I think that's probably going to close it out for this evening. So do we have a presentation on this?
We do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we have, who do we have with us? We've got Mark Vaughn, and who else do we have?
We've got Tony Capichetti with Hayes Engineering and Albert Ellis as well.
And Taylor, can you make sure they all have appropriate permissions?
Yep, you all should be able to unmute and share your screen if needed.
Okay, so why don't we turn it over to you? How long
Sure.
do you think your presentation will be?
I don't think we have a long presentation. I think it might be, just maybe addressing any comments, questions that you have, but I think we could get through this in probably 10 minutes. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn with the law firm of Reamer Bronstein, representing the applicant, Sunnybank Enterprises, in connection with the application. There we go. We've got folks that are involved in the team that are listed there. Thank you, Tony. Tony Capichetti with Hayes Engineering, controlling the slide deck here, and Albert Ellis with Sunnybank Enterprises is the developer, someone that I've worked with before, that history, track record of residential development, both large and small. And then I think Bill Gauze may be here as well, but he's the representative of the landowner. But so we're here tonight in connection with a preliminary subdivision plan for land off of Forest Street along the municipal boundary with the city of Woburn, which abuts the Vale development. Tony, I'm going to let you walk through this slide deck in a moment, but I just wanted to give some preliminary kind of remarks, I guess. But so it's 5 acres that it's zoned for single family residential. It's in the residential district B zoning district. And I'm not going to be repetitive. I know that we're getting late in the hour here. And so Tony can go through the details, but just a couple of things I wanted to mention is that while I don't represent Leggett McCall, who's the entity that's the developer of the Vale and the owner of the land, it's my understanding that they did meet with the town several years ago about this portion of the property and how it could be developed once the MWRA completed the construction of the water line, which I'm sure you've seen through the construction activity that's been happening over the past year or so, but that work has been completed and the water line is done. As part of those discussions, it was agreed that there would be an emergency access road developed that would connect to the rear of the Vale site, allowing access to Forest Street. And this proposed road would accomplish that as well. So over the past several months, we've had numerous meetings with various town departments to discuss the proposal and gather some preliminary feedback. I know we've met with engineering, conservation, fire, water department, and obviously with Taylor, you and Diab. I know we had a pre-filing meeting as well, just to try to get a sense of any preliminary feedback and do our best to incorporate it into the plan that's before you. Understanding, of course, that this is a preliminary plan. It doesn't have a lot of detail in it. That detail comes at the definitive plan stage. But really, the purpose of this and tonight is to gather any additional feedback you may all have so that we can do our best to reflect it in the definitive plan. So, so Tony, maybe you could just, I don't want to babble on here if I know we've got a slide deck to walk through, but.
Yep. I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. Tony Capichetti, Hayes Engineering, 603 Salem Street, Wakefield, Massachusetts, for the record. As Mark said, it's a 5-acre parcel of land on the north side of Forest Street, immediately south of the Vale project, approximate to both Woburn and Stoneham. Currently has an MWRA easement and transmission main that bisects the property and subject to an emergency access easement. This being the locus parcel, to the north of Forest Street. This is the Vale property. State 93 here. It is zoned residential B, which is 10,000 square foot lot size, 80 feet of frontage, can be reduced a little bit on a curve. What we're proposing is 431.5 linear feet of new roadway, which will be classified as residential. And I will revisit this based on some of the comments from other boards and commissions, which is a 15-mile-an-hour design speed for the 7 lots. There's an emergency gate proposed at the property line. That's part of the emergency access agreement for the Vale. We are providing sidewalk on one side, which is a requirement for residential roadway. And we're also going to extend that sidewalk along Forest Street to connect to the existing sidewalk network to the southwest. The maximum roadway grade is just shy of 8%. And then we have a 1% leveling area at the intersection. It gives us frontage to 7 residential lots. The lots would conform to the zoning bylaws. And just bisecting the site, running kind of east-west is wetlands and associated intermittent stream. There is a drainage easement that is nondescript that follows that stream bed that is Winchester is the beneficiary of. This is the lotting plan showing the roadway running generally north-south, 4 lots on the westerly side, 3 lots on the easterly side, and this being the wetland with the intermittent stream running through it, an existing culvert, and the stream and wetland continues onto the site. The MWRA transmission main and easement is located in this location here. It is to the west of the proposed road. And having discussed with MWRA, the thought process is, should they ever have to access that pipe, having it directly under the road would essentially shut the road down, require some excavation. This would only be affected by some driveway crossings for the majority of the easement. That's why the road was placed offset from that. This is the topographic plan. There is some grade, the hill rising to the northeast, sloping down to the wetlands. The proposed roadway is 18 feet of pavement with 6 inches of curb on either side, and then a grass strip on the northeasterly side, and a proposed sidewalk along the length of the westerly side, and then continuing to the southwest to the existing sidewalk network, which is basically in front of this garage here where it would connect to it. There's a proposed turnaround. This has been designed for the town of Winchester's Pierce ladder truck to reverse directions. And it shows some significant grading associated with this turnaround, but when the houses are placed on the lots, this grading kind of works into the houses that would be on the westerly side. These houses are all thought to be basement walkouts, so the homes would actually act as retaining walls. And then we have 3 houses sitting up on the hill in these areas, and then the flatland here. We did grade the lots out for our own purposes to make sure that they were feasible to be built. And we came up kind of under a worst case scenario with just straight grading behind the houses, what a tree line would look like for clearing. And that ends up saving about 2.5 acres of the 5-acre site, about 50% in its natural vegetated state, which is pretty significant for 10,000 square foot zoning. I think, saving 50% of the natural vegetation on the site is something that we're trying to do. We're trying to preserve the streetscape by maintaining the trees around the street and minimize the visual impacts to the abutters. These lots, the house sites are about 200 feet to the nearest residence. And when it's built out, the cuts and fills balance a lot better than what we have. As we said, that we parallel the MWRA main. Just for the roadway construction, we have about 427 cubic yards of surplus material. That's about 14 to 15 triaxle dumps worth of material. However, that would be placed on the lower side, on the westerly side for building the lots, and it actually balances much better once the houses are constructed. Stormwater split north-south by High Point in the road, and they go to 2 detention ponds that would ultimately discharge to the wetlands after being treated. The site is served by municipal water and gas, and also would have underground electric and natural gas. This is the roadway profile showing the high point where the road splits to the north and south, the drainage, catch basins at the low point at either end, underground water, underground sewer, with the maximum centerline cut of about, here's the centerline, of about 12 feet. So impacts from the project, as I said, about half of the site will remain in its current vegetated state. The height, the homes would be about between 4 and 5 bedrooms. They are limited in size because, as I said, the lot width requirement is 80 feet. We stay right around 80 to 100 feet with the setbacks. You're looking at a 50 to 60 foot house width based on the current zoning setbacks. About 200 feet from the nearest dwelling, existing dwelling to the proposed building pad. Minimal traffic generation. You're looking at 5 peak hour trips in the AM peak hour as a result of 7 homes, and 7 vehicle trips in the PM peak hour. So not a huge traffic generator. And then just looking at the DC, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education enrollment stats, the town of Winchester has 0.54 public school students per year-round dwelling unit. So you're looking at about 4 students on average from a 7-lot subdivision to the schools. We do have a handful of waivers that we're seeking. There's a requirement in the rules and regs that strongly recommends a ANRAD be filed before a preliminary. We have a 2019 wetland delineation, which, based off of the steep slopes on the site, you know, a horizontal rise of a foot in the wetland elevation is really only like a 2 or 3 foot lateral change. So we felt that the wetland delineation was close enough for a preliminary plan. We intend to honor the 25 foot no disturb, and then try and minimize the intrusion into the 100 foot. But a full and current delineation would be provided at the time of definitive, and Concom's looking for us to file concurrently, and we agree with that recommendation. The rules and regs require that emergency access connections or connections to other municipalities be through an approved subdivision roadway. We're connecting to a roadway that is part of a approved site plan, and there is easement language that's recorded in the other town for that connection. So that would be a waiver from the specific language. We haven't proposed a specific street name. We're using the generic name Road A. We'd like to coordinate as we move towards the definitive with either Historic Commission or Veterans Affairs to come up with a significant roadway name for the town of Winchester. Because we have a residential street, it's a pretty narrow right of way. We'd be looking to put the street trees outside of the right of way onto the private properties. It would remain a private road, so regardless of whether they were in the right of way or on the private property, they would still be the responsibility of the homeowners association. And then because we connect through to another municipality, it would be the construction of a dead end water. And we saw some comments from the abutters, and this is more for the abutters than the board itself, talking about approval of this plan. This is we're submitting this looking for guidance from the municipal departments. The board is not acting to approve a project per se. They're just providing us guidance and helping shape the project for the next step. There's still another portion to this approval process through the definitive plan that would have more public input, more board input, peer reviews, third-party reviews. So just to kind of address some of those public comments that we've seen. And then we'll open it up for questions and comments. And I'd like to start with a question to the board, because we did see a comment from the fire department seeking 26 feet of pavement from curb to curb. We can accommodate that. It is kind of excessive for the use, and we'd kind of look for some feedback from the planning board as to how they would like us to proceed. As far as fire code, the requirement is 18 feet of hard surface with 20 feet of clear space. So your residential street does meet the NFPA requirements, but we're looking to find a happy medium. I know, low impact development really pushes for narrower roadways, less pavement, and it does decrease the site impacts, but we want to be responsive to the boards. We think the planning board is really the driving force as to what we look at for the appropriate roadway and right of way.
Okay, thank you. So we, at this point, the board can either ask questions or we could have a quick glance through the other committees and boards which have reviewed this. What does the board want to do?
Can we see the other committees in town
Okay,
staff?
Yes.
okay,
What are
so
we being
Taylor,
asked? What will we be asked to do this evening for this?
I think that, so the board may decide that we have enough information to approve the preliminary subdivision, or the board may decide that we need more information to continue. So that's the
Right.
that's the decision that the board
Okay.
would want to make.
And just to like narrow it down one more, it's much like the process for the preliminary review, which this is, it's much like our process for an A&R. So you can approve with conditions, or you can deny. All three will continue the process. So even with a denial, the team still comes back with a revision, but you'll just do the preliminary again. It is the recommendation of both myself, the town planner, and our engineering department to either approve or approve with conditions. And those conditions could be such as, we would like you to, review some of the other board and committee recommendations. Nothing that you are voting on today is definitive. It's just they're here to start the process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you, Taylor. That was well put. Nick, does that give you
Yes,
enough
yeah,
information?
that's very helpful. Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
So,
And one other clarifying point, because I know that we have a lot of members of the public here. It's not the intention to have public comment tonight unless Diab, you decide otherwise. We will be having, because this is not a public hearing, but we will be having a public hearing in the future. At the conclusion of this meeting, we could either decide to schedule that tonight, or we can decide to schedule it at another point. But we will be having a public hearing between now and the definitive review.
yes, thank you. I don't know if we'll have time for public hearing. We have a lot of board input to consider.
Mm-hmm.
You had a question, Yisheng?
Yeah, just a process, but a lot of the public comments mentioned how they hadn't gotten a notice about it, and so that is a separate thing, and that they do get notices with public hearings, but not in particular for these kinds of things. Correct?
That is correct. This is the jumping off point for everyone. This is the first time that many members of the planning board, except for myself and the chair, are seeing this. It's the first time that the members of the public are seeing this as well. I should note for everyone who is in the public, all the information that has been shown and will be shown tonight is on the planning board's web page. If you go to current projects and click on this subdivision, you can see everything that we have. The public process starts tonight.
Right, but the public, yeah, so for people who are wondering why they haven't been noticed about this, the noticing happens for public hearings, and this is not a public hearing, so that's why no one's been noticed yet. But so why don't we jump to Taylor? In our packet, there were a number of comments, and maybe the best one to come in on is, because we have Brian Manter here, is to go in deep into the engineering one, because we have Brian here. So go for it, Brian.
Certainly, thank you, Chairman Jarius. So
You could just call
so
me
that-
Diab.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So in order to just keep this brief, I'll just summarize our findings really to the technical aspects of the proposal, and namely focusing on three things. One is that there's an MWA transmission main, which Tony noted, that goes up through this roadway. However, the plans in the preliminary level don't accurately reflect the size of the main, and or that there's a large valve vault right at the intersection of Forest Street and the proposed subdivision road, which will have major impacts on how they approach utilities and access to the site and road layout. And it appears that some of the existing information regarding the sewer connection to the manhole in Forest Street may not actually be accurate to what the depth of the manhole as depicted on their drawings, which will have a big impact on how they approach their sewer design and consequently or subsequently the associated utilities of water and sewer as well. The other aspect, the other high level comment is regarding the draft environmental and community impact analysis. There were several references to stormwater design. However, there was no supporting calculations to further support that approach, so that it was unclear really how they were going to handle runoff and stormwater management. And then the third high level comment would be that it'd be the engineering department's recommendation that the plan board exercise their powers to hire a peer reviewer to take a look at the utility aspects of this, the water, sewer, and drainage, in addition the stormwater management to this project.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Brian? Assistant Town Engineer. I'm sorry, I forgot to give you a title. If you, I can't see everyone, so just shout if you have a question.
No, I don't have one.
Okay. I was a little surprised, Brian, at some of the discrepancies.
Mhm.
And I don't know, is it normal to have some of these discrepancies, like the size of the manhole, etc.? Is that
Yeah, maybe the lack of information on the MWA water main is maybe the applicant wasn't aware of that work being done. It was done recently, maybe within the last eight months to a year. So maybe they weren't aware of that. But I can't speak to, how the applicant decided to convey the information beyond what they showed.
okay? That's a question for them later. Okay. Does the board want to go back and forth to the applicant and ask these questions, or do we want to just plow through all of the comments?
Well, I just want to say that this being the first time that we've seen this project in front of the planning board, and receiving your plans at the same time that we received detailed input from neighbors, and an excellent memo from the engineering department. I don't know that I have comments right now, but the package that I looked at, just the impression is that there's an enormous amount of work to be done if this were to go through to significantly reduce the environmental impact of developing buildable land in this parcel. My first impression is that trying to put 7 houses in this property, I don't care what the zoning says about the size of the lot. It seems way overly impactful given the terrain and the abundance of wetlands. My first reaction to the waiver request is, no, I don't think so. I would like to see actual up-to-date wetland boundaries with a new wetland survey, even before we talk about it further, because I just was clearly to me, looking at the plans and looking at the input from the community, that the environmental impacts of developing this site are significant.
Okay, wait, why don't I appreciate your thoughts. Why don't we actually get to some of those other inputs so that everyone can understand where your comments are
Good,
coming
yes,
from?
thank you.
So Taylor, why don't you bring us to, we have something from Elaine Vreeland, our, I forget what Elaine's actual title is. She is the conservation administrator. Go ahead, Taylor. I think we can all read, but you're probably better at summarizing than I am at this point.
It's been probably weeks since I read Eileen's letter, so.
Okay.
Find it.
So Elaine says we need a notice of intent. And this is essentially just saying these are the, is there an actual comment about anything that's lacking? Can we go to the next page?
Mr. Chairman, may I offer a comment that might be
Sure,
helpful?
go ahead.
So we certainly understand that we need to go through a Conservation Commission process. And I think as Tony had mentioned, our intention is to do that on a parallel simultaneous track. We'll be filing a notice of intent, NOI, as it's known, with the Conservation Commission for the construction of the road. I think we were just trying to be transparent and noted in the preliminary filing that we're looking at that 2019 wetlands delineation. I don't really know if it's a waiver requirement. I mean, the language of the subdivision rules and regs for preliminary plan filing says the board strongly recommends the applicant secure a resource area delineation from the Conservation Commission before preparing, submitting a preliminary subdivision plan. We know we need to do it as part of the definitive plan process. We feel reasonably comfortable that the delineation that we're looking at is accurate, but I think to Sally's comment, I mean, it needs to be done. We know it will be done, and we know that we can't proceed with any development here until and unless the Conservation Commission approves it. So
Yeah.
Tony, is that accurate?
That's correct. And if this was a broad flat site, the change in water elevation or the change in groundwater elevation actually of a foot could change that wetland line by 100 feet. But when you have a very steep site, even if the groundwater table were to rise a foot and you have hydric soils further out, you're talking 3 to 5 feet from where this line is. And we're doing our best to stay greater than 100 feet wherever possible and maintaining the 25-foot buffer. So as a long-term planning tool, when we go to the definitive, you may see things shift 4 or 5 feet on this plan. You're not going to see them shift 50 to 100 feet. So that was the thought process. Same with the information the engineering department's looking for. This is a preliminary plan. For someone to go spend $60,000, $70,000 to survey a piece of property without any input, we use what's available record information. The SOAR information was taken off of that 2019 record plan. The topography was taken through Mass GIS LiDAR. It's still pretty recent. It's 2021. We changed the datum from the as-built plans we got from MWRA because they're not on the same datum to try and get that information onto the plan. However, before the definitive plan, a full survey will be done. We're at the process that we're looking for these broad comments, these high-level comments that we are receiving, and we plan on addressing these. The main one out of all these comments, like I said, was the pavement width that the fire department came up with is somewhat different than what the rules and regs pushes you towards. So that's why we're really seeking some information from the planning board. And we just received these comments, I believe it was yesterday, Mark. So we would have liked to add a response.
This morning, actually.
Yeah. Right. So let's just move through these. I appreciate you're laying out what you need in terms of the waivers. but let's just move through these. And I think the takeaway from Elaine Vreemans is that these are just laying out the steps required to what you need to do to go through before the Concom. There's nothing substantive here in terms of a comment on the actual project. So I think we can move on. That just lays out a what seems to be a standard procedure. So you want to go to the next one here? And this is, it looks like, Taylor, this is your summary of what the design review has come up, or maybe just a restatement?
It's a restatement. Yes, this is the design review who has echoes a lot of the conversation. Excuse me, echoes a lot of the conversation that we have had. They look at individual lots and the buildable footprint of each lots and bring up a conversation about slope, a lot of suggestions about how steep are driveways, where are the driveways located, and it's mostly about slope, but yeah.
Right, and
and
it does talk,
and a little bit about drainage too.
but a lot about cut and fill. And so I think there's a decent question I think that raises is how much of the eventual building lots does the planning board take into account when they approve a subdivision plan, or when they think about, sorry, when they examine a subdivision plan to make sure that the resultant lots are actually buildable. And I know there has been a discussion about that in the past, and I see that we have lost town council. Have we lost town council?
Yep.
Yep. So this might be something the board would want to have town councils talk about, is how the board deals with, for instance, the grading that's required for the road, which is something that we can discuss, versus the grading which is required to build the homes, which is a separate process, which would go through, depending upon the amount of cut and fill, would have to probably go through a site plan review or something like that. So the design review committee has some real deep questions about the developability. There's a word. And do we have another, we have something from the fire department, I believe?
Yep. So they as Tony mentioned, they request, or they're requesting the roadway width of 26 feet curb to curb and a larger turnaround. I think the most important thing, and I think that this would eventually answer Tony's question, is that they're specifically requesting some sort of peer review that would help the planning board and help the fire department understand what is necessary here.
Yeah, and that's typical for a lot of these projects. We're open to that peer review. We submit a swept path analysis, and then that's reviewed, and we have no problem.
Do we have another comment from a town entity, or are we done with the
Nope, I
town
believe
entity?
that's it.
And then we have a couple of comments from residents. And if you want to, yeah, why don't we go through these? This, I believe, is.
Are any of them here?
Well, I think I don't know, but we're already 20 minutes over our stoppage time this evening.
All right.
So
All right, never mind.
I think the comments we have are not in favor of this project for a variety of reasons, some of which are environmental degradation, some of which are based on runoff, or I should say flooding. And so those we will we're going to keep track of everyone's comments, and those will be part of the board's concerns. So at this point, I think it's up to the board to make to have a discussion as to how we want to proceed. Does the board feel like it has sufficient information to move forward with a preliminary, or does the board want to see as Taylor pointed out, we have a number of ways forward. We could ask for more information before we do the approval of the preliminary. We could put conditions on the, Taylor, please read those again. It's getting late.
So there are three options. There's just flat out approval. This looks good. Let's move on to the next step. There's approval with conditions, which I just will say, based off of lengthy conversations between the planning department and the engineering department, this is what we suggest. And then there's a flat out denial. Now, what the denial would do is essentially we will have this meeting again. We do not create any forward motion. What a approval with conditions, let's just say, for example, if you could entertain, the planning board approves this subdivision under the condition that the developer works with the planning department, the planning board, and the engineering department to address all of the concerns raised in this meeting. That's one way to move this forward. You are not making a definitive suggestion, and that gives us time to work with all teams and all parties involved to get to a point where we're comfortable.
So I have significant enough concerns about this that I would like to see the number of parcels change. So what box does that put me in?
It's still the second one. There's nothing that we can or
the plan
cannot
could
do
be
with
dramatically changed before it's approved, even if we approve it with conditions.
That is correct.
Taylor, how does approving with conditions change? I mean, if we deny it, and as you said, they come back with a new plan, how is that any different from approving it with conditions?
We don't have the ability to work with, well, I mean, we can, because we know them well, but we wouldn't have the ability to work with them to create a better plan next time.
Okay.
And they would have to submit again.
Yeah.
Sally?
I strongly support Carrie's suggestion that there's a strong possibility that this would be a much more viable proposal to bring to the planning board if there were fewer sites. And so a condition to me would be, if you were to show the planning board the actual buildable land, excuse me, of the entire site that is outside of the 200-foot buffer zone. And then with that constraint, show us how many buildable lots there are. And that would be and regardless of the $70,000 cost, an updated survey of wetland boundaries, even as I understand Tony's point that steep slopes on wetlands tend to change more slowly in terms of their location. I still think this is a really complex site, and the grades are such that in addition to what I just said, the number of sites that we see on the property now to take advantage of the zoning call for some very, very steep driveways that I think would, I question if it's even navigable or legal. But at any rate, I just think this is not ready for prime time without serious consideration of clearly defined, updated wetland delineations and a new and staying within the 200 boundary, and then therefore a new layout of lots.
And to briefly touch on the road issue, you're suggesting that you're going to use it as an emergency exit for the Vale, which is a large development, and then you want to make it a narrow road, and I have concerns about that as well, in addition to the extreme environmental impact. And in 2019, that was a wooded area. So yes, I think we need a current wetland delineation.
Yeah, no, we definitely will be doing a wetlands delineation. There's no question about it. I mean, and you know, I think, Tony, the width of the roadway, you did the way you did it, the 18 feet, to comport with the subdivision rules and regs, correct?
Yes, for the residential road. And
Yeah.
the emergency access agreement only opens it to fire trucks in and out. And we did run the Winchester fire ladder through the site. It can make it in and out of the Vale. I can say that we have filed from that 2019 delineation. We're also working for the property owner at 248 Forest Street. We just had the Conservation Commission out for a site walk and a hearing, and they upheld the 2019 delineation on that site. So globally, the water tables are not changing. So we went out, we reflagged those flags and walked that area, and there was no change. And 248 is the next property to the towards Stoneham to the east.
Uphill.
It is uphill. It is the same wetland system. We're not expecting huge changes on the wetlands. We do have a plan showing how houses would grade out, and we also, when we did that plan, did not take advantage of any walls, which is something that we would consider when we do put these houses out. What we're really hoping is, you know, we received these comments that we're taking into consideration. What we're hoping is that we could now, to do a definitive plan, you're probably looking at it, it'd probably be 2 to 3 months before we're back in front of you. But by flushing these comments out and now understanding the density is a concern for the planning board, is something that we can work towards. We'd like to come back with a definitive plan, and that's why we're looking for an approval with conditions to get all these comments. And if the board's not ready tonight, maybe we could provide some additional information to make them feel more comfortable. But a denial would, again, a lot of the information we're providing is not required. The full topography, those aren't requirements of the preliminary plan. The idea of the preliminary plan is so the developer can come in with limited expense and get the guidance that we're receiving from your departments, so he can go forward with some comfort in moving on to the next step in purchasing the property, as well as moving into the design. And we are hearing loud and clear that, you know, maybe reduction of the number of lots, and that may be in conjunction with widening the roadway that the fire department's looking for. So again, these are all valuable comments that this is the idea behind the process, and we are getting that feedback from the process so it is working.
And there's some math that needs to be squared here. You're suggesting that these are modest sized homes, and you're suggesting that they have 4 to 5 bedrooms, and you're suggesting that 7 lots with 35 bedrooms are producing 4 school children for the system. And I think that math seems very wrong.
Yeah, can I comment on that? So look, I understand that point. I know that there might be eyebrows that go up when you hear that number, right? It's an inexact science, right? All we can do is look at what the data is, which is that, you know, as Tony had mentioned, he looked at what the school data is on, you know, school age children per household, right? So it could be more, it could be less, but you know, we have to go off of some data point. It's an inexact science, but again, I don't think 7 homes are going to be something that is, you know, going to be dramatic in that regard. But
it may just be a point for the planning board to think about.
So if I could move us forward on process. So I think that the board, I think, can take a look at the waivers that are requested and make a decision tonight whether they are okay with those waivers. If not, then
you actually don't have to make that decision tonight. You don't have to make the decision of the waivers tonight.
But some of those waivers are required for a preliminary subdivision.
And we can continue to have the the
Yes.
conversation. But
Yes.
if that's going to be a holdup for the
Well,
ultimate decision, it doesn't have to be made tonight.
no, but I was hoping we could move forward on something. I think that
Okay.
one of the things I think it's important is a better understanding as to what the emergency access to the Vale is, and I think the board is not familiar with that project enough to understand what that means. So I think that you need to come back and give us a better idea of what that is supposed to be for. And I think that that's one of the things. And if we can pop those, if whoever's got the slide with the waivers, if we can take a look at those, and if the board feels like they can make a decision on that, whether they agree with the waiver or not, that would give us some movement forward. So we've heard the arguments about how the 2019 wetland delineation, a change in it would be not substantive, would not substantially change the areas considered. Does the board want further information on that, or?
I defer that to Concom.
Right, did that letter include something from Concom about that?
Elaine Vreeland's letter, but I didn't have a chance to read it.
Elaine Vreeland's letter really laid out essentially what the steps are required, but I don't believe it actually made any definitive statement,
I'd say
because
I don't want to vote on that waiver until we have a statement from Concom that's clear about that.
And I agree with
Okay.
that, Carrie. Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, I would support that as well. I mean, I feel like we're being rushed to go through all these at this hour.
Well, we don't have to do anything, as Taylor pointed out. So I think it seems like a majority of the board wants more information from the Concom as to whether or not this waiver is appropriate. So we can reach out to the Concom and find that out.
Right.
So the emergency access, I think a question has been raised as to what that actually entails. And so I think it'd be good to come back to the board with more information on that. Street plantings, I think that really comes down to our understanding of how wide the road is. And so I think we'll need further understanding. And I think it was pointed out in some of the comments, maybe it was from design review, that the viability of putting the trees on the lots, because of the grading, they might not be the best place for the trees to grow. So, and then the water main issue, that's something I think we need to have engineering give us more information on. Because I don't know
What was that issue, Diab? The water
it's
main?
at the bottom of the screen, construction of a dead end water main.
Oh, I see. Yes, right. Okay.
And so I think
I think it's probably fine that we use it Street A until they come up with a name.
Yeah, we don't.
yeah, that is fine. And we do have a committee on names somewhere in town. I think I'm on it. Who knows? So I think I think the board is not ready to vote on anything other than to say that we want more information.
So I have another kind of big chunky question about this, which is that I know from the board consideration of another subdivision in town, that when those subdivision plans were submitted to the town, they included locations and footprints of houses, and we were instructed that those indications on those plans were not part of our vote. Now, in this particular site, if we have complete compliance with the 200-foot setback, and we agree in principle that driveways should not be, a 45-degree slope, that therefore fewer house sites are on this property, I mean, fewer number of subdivision lots would be created. That the plans, not only would they show updated wetland delineations, but that they would, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Damn it, I hate it when I do that. That they would. All right, what was the first part of what I said?
So is it, I mean,
The
is
house
this a
location?
question you have as to how the layout of the houses affects
Yes,
our
I'm sorry.
decision?
Thank you. I lost my thread about that. That the question would be, since there would in possibilities be very few places where a footprint of a house could sit, whether the developer chooses to show a recommended footprint location or the limits of the developable land and footprint location. For each
So,
of the lots. That's what it would be really important for me to see. Looking at the plans that were supplied, there were so many different dots and dashes, and I know if we saw it on a full color screen, the lines would not blend as they do, the different boundary lines. But I think that showing us a definitive, or not the next site plan that shows clearly where the 25 and 200 lines are, and the size of the water main and the width of the road. It was very difficult to really measure this out, but it seems like it's too dense for the site, and I would want more information about the things I discussed.
okay, so I think that we would, one of the, I think one of the uncertainties the board has is how the eventual layout of the houses fits into its decision on the subdivision. And why don't we arrange to get legal to come in and give us some sort of a primer on that? Taylor, if you would write that down so we can reach out to legal and have them come in and talk to us about that. I think that would be
And that is
useful.
in compliance with the 200-foot setback, not invading that line anywhere on the site.
For you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's a 100-foot setback for jurisdiction to wetlands, and it's a 25-foot no touch. The 200 feet
Yeah.
to a perennial stream or a river, which does not exist on the site.
Yeah, let's
That also needs to be determined though, right? 'Cause
I think that is to be determined. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, no, certainly we understand that the lots will involve Conservation Commission jurisdiction, and we would need to go through that, because there'd be work within the buffer zone. So we understand that. So,
yeah,
just as it relates to the building foot, I think you're correct, whoever had said that. I forget if it was Kerry or Sally, but our understanding is that the town does not want to have building footprints shown because there doesn't want to be any confusion that, those are going to be the footprints that are, set in stone, and, it creates confusion along the way. I think it's pretty safe to say that on the left-hand side of the subdivision, I guess it would be lots 1 through 4, the building footprint is going to be as close to the roadway as the front yard setback would allow in that instance. It's just a matter of common sense. We're trying to minimize any, site grading issues or anything like that. We want to keep the homes as close to the road. So I think that, I guess since the waivers are up here, I mean, there are no waivers that are granted at a preliminary plan stage. Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, right? So I mean, I
That's
think
correct.
I think what could happen here is if the board wanted to, and I'm not suggesting what the board should do, but to approve the preliminary plan subject to addressing all of the town department comments that have been submitted, and to provide further justification for the waiver requests as part of the definitive plan filing. I mean, I think that accomplishes what it seems to be what the board is getting at, which is that you want these comments addressed as part of the definitive plan submission. So
I just, so the clarity, so that the first one says allow for use of a 2019 wetland delineation for the preliminary plan, which does imply that you need some sort of waiver, or else you wouldn't for the preliminary plan, else you wouldn't have asked for it.
Well,
Right.
Tony, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I mean,
Yeah, it was
the way-
strongly recommended.
so
That's how it's worded, it's a strong recommendation that we
it's
file
not
in
a,
the INRAD.
Okay,
it's not a requirement. So, I mean, I think, Tony's putting this together was trying to be, again, as transparent as possible that,
Okay.
I don't think it's a waiver, to be honest with you. I think it's just that, hey, we're letting you know that we're using the 2019, but don't fret, because the definitive plan is going to be based on a true wetlands delineation that's going to be done sometime over I don't know, Tony, when do you see that being done?
Once the snow's off the ground, probably late February, early March, high groundwater, but it'll be done based off of hydrosoil and vegetation.
Well, so Tony and Mark, since I'm asking to see a whole new plan, with fewer lots and less steep driveways and complete respect of all boundaries for wetlands and setbacks, that would be a new preliminary submittal. It would not be a definitive site submittal. Right?
Well, I respectfully, Sally, I think if you wanted to include in your recommendation of the preliminary, or one of your comments, that the applicant consider less density as part of the definitive plan, and the lots themselves, in terms of how they're developed, I don't believe that the board can necessarily condition in terms of driveways or things like that what happens within the lots. But certainly, if you wanted to, convey, which I think you've already conveyed, that you would like for the applicant to consider perhaps less density, I think that could be included as a recommendation.
Right, and I am going to trust that our engineering department will come back with a recommendation to not have a driveway with a 45% slope. And I'm assuming that the Conservation Commission will weigh in to the limits of their ability on what's buildable on this land. So if those are included or implicit in any kind of approval tonight, that would really be necessary.
So I think the key is that the subdivision has specifications for the grade of the road. Anything about what's built on the lots, it comes under, it's not part of the subdivision regs, it's all
Right.
part of building code. And so if those buildings meet all of the requirements specified under building code and whatever other things that apart, then we don't have any say over that.
That's true. If a 45% driveway or whatever it ends up being is a building code approved thing, then that's not our jurisdiction.
Yeah,
I can tell you none of the driveways are at 45%. When we work the lots out, we hold a 10% maximum. That's kind of the industry standard. You really don't want to go over 10% on a residential driveway. So they are at a max of 10%. I know it's hard to picture just looking at the
Well, it
roadway
is
design.
because like on lot 6, you'd have to go into the 100-foot buffer zone to avoid the really steep area of the site. And that, I mean, that's just an example. There's just no way to get into that. You could do it on lot 5 with a switchback driveway.
So we
Lot
would have to
6 is
file a
not-
notice of intent on lot 6. The driveway would come in on the low side and it switchbacks and comes up to so the house is sited outside. It would be a minor incursion for just the driveway and come up this way. The house would be garage on grade, and then the basement would have a walkout elevation on this side, taking advantage. So these are 1-foot contours. There's about 10 feet across the site there. So the house would go from at your garage elevation. Here we're looking at like 152, and then there's about an 8-foot separation. The basement floor would come out at 144. You'd have a step down and be right out at about 142 over here.
Right.
And we just create a small pad out per yard.
That's your analysis, and we just discussed that anybody can build anything as long as it's to code, it's not exactly where you think it might logically be, right?
Winchester is pretty forward thinking. I think the only lot that may not trigger site plan review through the zoning board of appeals, because if you're changing the grade for more than 600 square feet, and I don't remember the exact term, but we looked at it,
500 square feet, 6%.
500 square feet, 6%. The only one that may not require site plan review is lot 7, but the driveway may trigger it in here. So at a minimum 6, probably all 7 would be going to ZBA for house construction approval on the site plan review.
So can I, we're now 10:15. So is there a consensus from the board as to which way it wants to move on this?
Yeah, I think that of the 3 options that we talked about, the approval, just blanket approval doesn't seem to be the one that anyone is thinking about. And the denial seems to make it so that we aren't able to continue a productive conversation. So the approval with conditions, and it seems like this subdivision will depend very much on our staff, town staff, engineering, conservation, as well as 53G consultant understanding of how these things will go. If we could include an approval with conditions of the comments made by all the town staff and our design review comments. And that, I think that would cover us for the time being. And I would make that motion.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
So
Uh,
understanding that Conservation Commission approval of a project is parallel to and separate from the planning board approval of a project, can a planning board approval of a project be contingent upon or have a condition that the plans comply completely with the Conservation Commission's conditions?
Well, since they're parallel and separate, if they don't meet the conservation, if they cannot meet the conditions specified by the Conservation Commission, it can't go forward anyway.
But we have to do them sort of like, we're gonna ask for more information from them, so we know exactly where the 100-foot is, and we get their
Yes,
back on the site, and then we have to say, yes, that, this can be the infrastructure, and then they have to say, these are the conditions for the environment. We have to go, it's, the choreography is so frustrating, but that's just the way it goes.
yeah, but
I'm so
we
glad you
don't
have
have,
the experience from both sides, Carrie. Thank you.
but we don't have to condition our decision on the Concom's decision.
Right, we can, right.
Right, but we will be working very closely together, if only because this is one heck of a confusing looking landscape. Okay, so I think that, so the motion is to proceed with a preliminary approval of preliminary subdivision with the conditions, and the conditions are, I think we do need to summarize some of them.
We have to
although
write
the-
them down right now.
Really?
Yeah, well, I
Oh,
think we have to, because I
okay.
don't think we can simply say, here's what we all discussed, because nobody will remember. So I think they are the condition is to work with town staff to
Which is engineering and planning and
staff, okay, engineering,
and
planning,
conservation officer.
And we're also hearing that they drove the fire truck down the road, and the fire department has a memo from today that says the road has to be wider, so we need that conflict resolved.
Right, and we
yeah,
need to hear review from the fire department consultant.
Yep. Hold on one sec, folks. I can only
Okay.
write so fast. So I'm gonna cross everything out. So work with planning department, engineering department, conservation officer, fire department, and we have to get a 53G in here somewhere, to resolve the concerns raised in the engineering design review and fire department memos. And to pursue lower density and what else?
I do think it would be good to show suggested driveway entrances to the sites. So that they can demonstrate to us that they can see that realistic driveways can be built. And I know Tony said he was only going to, infiltrate the buffer zone just ever so slightly with a driveway. And if that can be, even that can be fully avoided by showing driveway entries as you imagine them.
Sally, would it satisfy you if the alternative was for them to show all the setbacks, the zoning setbacks that they're necessary front, side, back? And
Well,
then
that is
also the
yes.
setbacks for any of the water protection issues. And so
Right.
you see the leftover available land possible, like in shaded rather than the driveway or the shape of the house or whatever it is. So would that then help you determine?
Well,
'Cause
yes, they could shade in everything color coded or whatever to show this is the part of the property that can be disturbed.
Is that possible from the applicant? Is that?
So we can do that, and I do want to let you know that when we file a conservation, we will have to file for the lot disturbance within the 100 feet, so they will have houses shown on their plan. We know that the planning board does not want to see the houses because there's some confusion as to what binds you. But when we go through conservation, we have to show the houses on each of the sites to show them that disturbance within the buffer zone. So there will be a point of reference for the planning board. While you may not be deciding on the house locations, you'll have that additional information as you're going through your next set of decisions.
And does that align with what I Ching was just suggesting?
It does it, so we can show all your setbacks on your plans. As Mark has been saying, we were asked not to show houses because of some prior confusion, but we can show the setback lines. We can show the driveways as you've asked, and then the Conservation Commission will have house sites because they are approving that intrusion into the buffer zone, and because they're running on a parallel track, that will be public record that the planning board members can look at as you're formulating your decision. It may not be part of your submissions, but that will be publicly available information running in a parallel track.
Right.
So is that acceptable, Sally?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so we're gonna ask for plans with lot lines, with setbacks and buildable areas.
Just
Any
to
other?
chime in on some of those plans that you're asking for are all requirements of the definitive subdivision bylaw. So I know it's not, I don't think it's worth us going into it right now, but section 6 subdivision goes through all of the required documentation, and there's like 50 or 60 different plans that they have to submit.
Right.
What they've submitted today is what is necessary. A lot of what we've talked about what we want is already a requirement for what they will need to give us moving forward.
I think it's the reduced density requirement that's making me think that we can't rush to definitive until we've proven feasibility. That's all I think is what I'm saying.
I don't think we're rushing. We won't be rushing through this, I don't think.
Okay.
I think this is likely to take several months.
Okay.
Yep. again, through you, Mr. Chair, we're probably a two to 3 month process to get all the information for the definitive. And I did take a quick look at the rules and regulations. A denial would not stop us from going through with the definitive plan. There is no requirement on residential to file a preliminary.
Right.
It is recommended. We're here to get these comments, and this allows us to understand what you want. It provides on the record the changes that you're expecting from us as we move forward. So
Yes, thank you.
dialogue.
That's helpful.
So the motion I have is to work with the planning department, engineering department, conservation. What is Elaine's title?
I think she's the
Conservation.
Conservation Commissioner.
Now she's the
agent.
Conservation Commission Administrator.
Administrator. Thank you. The fire department to resolve the concerns raised in the engineering, design review and fire department memos, and to pursue a lower density. That's the motion I have right now.
So where does the feedback from residents fall into the motion? It doesn't?
I think that we take that into account when we look at the final subdivision.
I see,
And-
okay.
And I think that the residents have raised concerns that I don't know that I personally don't know enough to be able to understand, for instance, the questions of flooding. And then there's certainly the question of, you know, the value of undisturbed land, which is, I think, one of the issues raised by one of the residents.
Yes, that's correct.
How that fits into subdivision control is something that, again, I think it would be useful to have town council give us a little bit of a primer on what are the allowable, what are the constraints around our decision process.
And we could also imagine at this definitive site plan stage, asking for a stormwater peer review, is that right?
Well, my next question at this point is, do we wish, and maybe we can get some, I think the board will be looking at least for a stormwater. And then if we're going to be looking at, I don't know, do we need to also look at someone to help us with the road width and the turning distance, or the road width? Is that
Yes,
engineering?
there was a recommendation that the fire department, or a peer reviewer from the fire truck world. I know I'm not saying it right.
Right. So I think that we should probably add stormwater and Brian, can you provide the magic words for the peer review of the fire truck?
They asked
the
for a peer review to be conducted by Pierce Fire Engineering to ensure that their ladder truck can safely traverse the proposed roadway.
Okay, so we're just going to say stormwater and fire equipment road traversal.
Yeah, and may I also add water, like potable water, like water main design, especially as it relates to that waiver request for the dead end of the water main.
Oh, okay, right. So that's potable, and so stormwater.
Yeah.
Potable water.
Yeah.
Do we need sewer as well?
Yes, probably need to look at that just to verify capacity of the downstream sewer network.
Okay, so we have stormwater, potable water, sewer, and fire equipment road traversal. Any other consultants?
There is a request, Brian, you
We
can
can-
speak to this. There's a request for information from the Vale, right? What do you need from, you just need documentation from the Vale Development officially acknowledging the connection, I think, right? Is that part
Yes,
of
and that's correct. And that ties back into what we were discussing earlier about how would that connection be made? How would it be managed? Who would be using it? All that stuff.
Right.
I do think we'd be very strict about that, because if that was to be opened up as a public way, it would change.
It will not,
Usually change the amount of traffic going through there.
it will not, it's not, there's long-standing agreement that this will not be opened up as a public way.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had this this was a discussion that we had, what, 3-4 years ago when the Vale first came about, and there was
Good.
quite a bit of discussion
Good.
about, so that's not the issue. I think it's important that we get more information on, so the board understands that. Okay, so that is the motion that I have. Do I reread it? Are we happy with it?
I want to make sure that Brian, on all of these peer reviews, I mean, the statement of the obvious, but the peer review isn't done prior to the submission of the definitive. We submit the definitive, and then these elements would be peer reviewed as part of that process.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not asking for them to be done now. We're just saying that that's what we're going to ask for.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
great. One question too for this is, because it isn't used as a pass-through by Vale, do we treat this as a cul-de-sac, and does that make it any different than anything else, right?
It's a really good question.
Right?
yes, that is a question that has been raised. And so we have not yet met a cul-de-sac that we didn't like. So,
Well, I have to say, given how valuable this land is right now with its tree cover and wildlife habitat, if we can get away with what I call that a hammerhead, I don't know what other traffic type people do, but and get away with not having to have a circle, we will be able to save more
Yes,
land.
that's true. Right. Not
Preserve
having
more
a
land.
bigger asphalt requirement there.
Yeah.
But
I'd be happy with the narrower road.
The non-connection to the community, or whatever that sort of ethos is for cul-de-sacs. How do we, if we treat that differently legally, or?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the subdivision rules and regs actually don't use the term cul-de-sac. It references dead end. It says, no subdivision with a dead end. We don't view this to be a dead end. It doesn't, terminate. It, does continue for the purposes of providing emergency access, and there's going to be sidewalk connectivity and whatnot. So, we don't feel it, falls within that orbit, but yeah.
So that's something the planning board will, I'm sure, opine about. Okay, so once more, let me read this motion for the last time, and then we can have a vote. So the motion is to work with the planning department, engineering department, conservation administrator, fire department to resolve the concerns raised in the engineering, design review, and fire department memos, and to pursue lower density, and that we will be asking for stormwater, potable water, sewer, and fire department road traversal 53G consultants at the appropriate time. So I think that was the motion. Did we have a second? I forgot.
Yeah, I made that motion and Carrie seconded it.
Okay, so I think I think we're done with the discussion. Shall we just move to a vote? Let's see, Sally?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
I Ching?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. Thank you all very much. I think that we will probably want to hear from you folks sooner rather than later to maybe address some of the concerns of the board. I know you'll be working on the definitive subdivision, but I think communications before then would be really helpful. So.
And thank you all for staying a little later tonight and working through these issues. It's appreciated.
Okay. So
Thank
on
you all
that
very
note,
much.
Thank you all. On that note, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
We're not going to talk about the MBTA 3A schedule at all.
We
No,
have
we
a
aren't.
meeting we have a meeting tomorrow evening that for the public that I think we should all attend, and we are having a, let's see, do we have a meeting next week?
We have a special meeting next Tuesday, the
We have
30th.
a special meeting next Tuesday. And to be honest, I don't think I can go on much further tonight. So
Good.
I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Nick,
Aye.
I Ching,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Sally.
Aye.
And I say aye as well. Thank you all very much. Thanks to Nancy Polcari, our recording secretary. Thank you to WinCam. Thanks to Brian Manter, town engineer, Taylor Herman, town planner. Thanks to all of our town residents who showed up for our discussions this evening. It's much appreciated. Thanks to you all out there in TV land. We hope to see you tomorrow evening at what's the time again, Taylor?
7
It
p.m.
says, yep,
Yeah.
7 p.m.
Some-
Ooh, you even printed out the
7
flyer.
to 8:30.
At the Winchester Room in
The
Town
Winchester
Hall?
Room in Town Hall.
Okay, be there or be square. At least that's what we
Aye.
used to say. See you all later. Bye.
Good night.